Players are invited to a place where dreams come true. Dreamside. This game ranks first in the ratings, first in popularity, and first in number of online users. A game known in virtually every aspect. A nationwide pastime that everyone has tried at least once. Idols, actors, and politicians have played Dreamside. People of all ages have played it. In this game, you can make your dreams come true. The best player, whom no one could ever beat, was an unattainable dream for many. For this young man, he became a reality. He held the top spot in the rankings. The system announced that the channel would soon be closed. The young man thought this was strange. Half an hour earlier, the young man, who worked as an express delivery courier, had sent an SMS to a customer. At the same time, he was persistently pressing the pre-order button for a second Dreamside. At that moment, the elevator suddenly stopped. The passenger lost his balance and almost fell. The emergency button in the elevator did not work, and he was unable to contact the rescue service. While the young man waited nervously for a call from the elevator, an information window appeared in front of him. The delivery guy checked. It was a projection. The window looked familiar, but why was it floating there? It was necessary to confirm the creation of the channel. An avid gamer like this guy couldn't resist and pressed confirm. A message appeared on the screen informing him that he had received a new task. He had to find a way out of the elevator. Soon, the elevator would be devoured by parasites. He had 1 minute to complete the task. Failure meant death. The hero turned around and saw a huge number of insects behind him. He screamed in surprise. One of the beetles was already crawling on his head. It was unbearable. The courier screamed in terror. His cry could be heard even outside the building. The young man jumped through a crack in the wall. A message appeared saying that the task had been completed. His reward was a sturdy long sword. The guy decided that the insects couldn't get through the crack. It was a portal that appeared when you exited the game. The young man did not understand what was happening, or why a mission window had appeared in front of him. Could it be that he had not played for so long that he was hallucinating? The guy turned around and saw an armed goblin approaching. Where did he come from? The goblin swung a wooden hammer at the hero's stomach. It hurt like hell. The guy couldn't believe it. Was this real? The young man noticed that his health had decreased after the attack. The courier realized he had to get out of there as quickly as possible. But how? What if he missed another blow while running away? He had less than half his health left, and he couldn't take even one more hit. The goblin standing in front of the young man posed a serious threat. The guy pulled out a long sword. This time, the young man was more careful and managed to dodge the attack. Looking closer, he realized that this green enemy was not very big. The boy decided that there was no time to think, and that he had to run immediately. So he did. The young man headed for the stairs. However, a message appeared. The player is in training, and this area is unavailable. The hero realized that he had nowhere to run. What should he do now? The goblin turned around and threw a wooden hammer at the man. The courier ducked, and the hammer broke through the wall and got stuck there. The goblin was left unarmed. The system reported that the player's level had been significantly increased and adjustments had been made. The guy didn't understand what was happening, but suddenly calmed down. The young man remembered. This mob was one of many monsters from the F-rank dungeon. If this were Dreamside, the goblin could simply be ignored. This meant that the chance of losing here was practically zero. The goblin decided to attack the player again. The guy only now realized that he had had the advantage from the very beginning. The goblin jumped high into the air and was about to strike from above, but the young man thrust his sword forward and impaled the enemy on the blade. The guy thought, if everything is really like in the game, then there must be at least 5 goblins. But can they do anything? The young man shook his head, summoning the green creatures to attack. The system announced, the player has completed the quest. All monsters on the 13th floor have been destroyed. The player received the title Sneaky Killer. The hammer goblins despised him. However, it didn't matter, because all the goblins had been defeated. The system announced that the player had received tattered rags. The express delivery courier thought that this was a real game. After all, today was the official release date. Everything must be real. Maybe it's augmented reality. But why is he so calm? It was probably related to that incident. If everything was really like in the game. The guy glanced at the status window. All the necessary information was there. It said that the Cool Head skill had been activated. The original skill was Celestial Body. The hero didn't understand why he had a skill that he had been grinding for a whole month. At the time, it seemed pointless. Could this be the reward for closing the server? Dreamside. Once a hugely popular game, now considered trash. Its excessive difficulty was the reason for its failure. Many players simply left, unable to adapt to its mechanics. But the main reason the game was called trash was the 3 lives system. If a player died 3 times, their character was deleted. For this reason, there weren't many advanced players in the game. There was a serious imbalance between the top players. The first 12 were considered superhuman. Among users, they were recognized as god-level players. They were also known as those above the heavens. The number 1 among them was named K. That was our hero. However, 5 years later, the server was shut down. A vote was held on the website, after which the last server of the first Dream side was finally shut down. Before that, players could choose and transfer an item to Dream Side 2, God of Lightning, or Heavenly Body. The young man did not expect to receive a reward in this way. If he had known, he would have chosen some mythical item in advance. But instead, he took 3 important things with him. The system reported that the player was adapted to combat. Now the young man understood why using a sword had become so easy. In addition, he felt something he had never felt before while playing the game. The player's mind was completely calm. Apparently, this was thanks to the Heavenly Body. The boy thought that maybe he could get the other 2 items as well. However, he probably wouldn't be able to use them yet, as they were intended for a later stage of the game. The system informed the player that he was still in training mode. The monster levels would be adjusted. The system warned that a boss monster was expected to arrive soon. The girl left the apartment without saying goodbye and closed the door. The young lady felt the house shake. What could that be? Suddenly, a goblin appeared in front of her with a wooden hammer in his hands. Goblins began to appear everywhere in the house, frightening the residents with their presence. Screams rang out from all directions. These sounds reached our hero's ears. The young man realized what was happening. The guy thought, is it really starting? He only had 10 minutes left. If it was like in the game, hammer goblins would soon appear, and many people could die. Dungeon transformation. This is an event during which a normal area becomes infected and filled with monsters. But the appearance of E-rank monsters is too much. That was the essence of Dreamside. It was hard to imagine that an entire building could transform. Without being a player, it would be impossible to deal with the goblins. The young man didn't know what to do next. The hero looked around, but he had cleared the 13th floor. If mobs from other floors weren't coming down here, that meant they couldn't leave their zone. The guy figured that if he left the floor, it would be considered cleared, with all the consequences that entailed. Now the young man understood what he had to do to clear the entire building. First, he had to get to the roof. The hero heard cries for help. It seemed that the building had already begun to transform, and he could simply move to the neighboring building through the roof. But what would happen to the people? The only way familiar to the best ranker, K, was to save everyone. The guy realized that he couldn't leave. He had to raid the dungeon. The player was sure that in training mode, the dungeon boss couldn't tolerate light and was programmed to guard the basement. That meant the boss was definitely there. The young man knew only one way to get there in 10 minutes. He had to use the thing that appeared after the infection. A portal. The portal appeared after the infection stopped, so there shouldn't be any problems. The system reported that the player had used the Cool Head skill. The young man found himself in an underground parking lot. The system notified him that the player had discovered a hidden lair of an infected entity. The guy wasn't surprised at all that his guess was right. The creators didn't even bother to change anything in the second part. Although, on the other hand, the game became reality. And that's a big difference. In the underground parking lot, goblins armed with wooden hammers roamed among overturned cars. The guy noticed a portal and realized how the goblins were getting upstairs. To save the people, he had to block the portal. To do that, he would have to defeat the boss monster. But where was it hiding? Suddenly, a huge goblin appeared. The guy managed to hide at the last moment. It was the boss, the infected entity. The hero noted that in the real world, this boss seemed truly enormous. Could it really be a goblin? The player suggested that the boss was more like the heroes from movies, big and green. The young man decided that he was the real boss of the dungeon. The hero understood that the transformation had not yet completed the conversion of this place into a dungeon. There was one more tactic to learn before the final transformation, but to use it, he had to wait for the right moment. When there was 1 minute left, the mobs appeared with the status, shortness of breath. At that moment, the young man activated the skill, Cold Blood. A few moments before the transformation, all the monsters began to have serious breathing problems. 1 minute before the area turned into a dungeon, the boss froze and had difficulty breathing. Many players use this technique. At the right moment, our hero attacked the boss. He wasn't sure if this tactic would work here. However, there were no exceptions. The player decided to scare the small mobs first. To do this, he needed to choose a suitable location. The title, Sneaky Killer, was used. The goblins' rage increased. In their fury, they were less able to analyze what was happening. The player turned his attention to the boss. Had his shortness of breath stopped? But the boss, straining, forced himself to move. It was necessary to deal with this monster urgently before the effect wore off. The young man swung his sword and shouted that the monster's end had come. The presenter said he wanted to talk about the weather for today. Most of the country would see clouds and dusty streets from their windows. Strong winds would rise in the metropolis, and in the morning, the city would be covered in thick fog. At that time, overturned and broken cars were scattered everywhere on the streets. The presenter noted that due to the large amount of dust, it was best to refrain from walking and outdoor activities. Cars stood on the roads with motionless bodies inside. No one was left alive. This morning could have been like any other. But today everything was different. In just 10 minutes, the events that took place around 6 in the morning engulfed the capital, located in the center of the country. After that, the disaster instantly engulfed the entire country. The internet exploded with discussion. Early in the morning, an unidentified monster suddenly appeared in the city center. It was believed to be from the game Dreamside 2. The government denied the incident. Posts were deleted, but people began to believe what they had seen. Those who remained unconvinced were left in doubt. In the dressing room, the girls discussed what had happened. One of them suggested that it was not true, just computer graphics. Nothing had happened in their city. But if it turned out to be true, it would be like a movie, only in real life. One of the girls, looking at the image, immediately realized that it was Dreamside. The girl turned out to be Choi Hana, a famous idol. The streamer showed lizards with spears and said that it was unexpected. They literally fell from the sky. Choi Hana asked in fear if this was a dungeon transformation. The stylist asked Miss Hana not to move. Choi Hana was the best singer-songwriter in the country. The girl was called the continent's top idol. She was a versatile celebrity. She starred in movies, appeared in commercials, and performed on stage. However, the sweet and innocent Choi Hana had a secret. The manager popped into the dressing room and announced that all events had been cancelled. They had to go to the dorm immediately, so Choi Hana had to get ready quickly. The girl was indignant. What did completely cancelled mean? The manager had to look at the screen. The man was surprised to see that she had a smartphone. He reminded her that Choi Hana was not allowed to use her phone. Otherwise, she could get into trouble again. However, after looking at the screen, the manager decided that it was just a movie. Choi Hana claimed that it was a live broadcast from Namsan Tower. The monster on the screen was called Red Wyvern. Hana insisted that the manager had seen it himself, and that the situation couldn't get any worse. Dreamside had become a reality. The man was stunned. Dreamside again? The girl was clearly addicted. The phone had to be confiscated. Another secret of Choi Hana was her gaming account in Dreamside. The girl demanded that her phone be returned immediately. Those Above the Heavens was the name given to the 12 players who had risen above everyone else. Among them, the best gunner was ranked 12th, the magical gunner, Clark. This was a hobby that even Choi Hana's fans didn't know about. No matter how hard people tried to find out her real name, the girl always hid it, not even revealing her age. To avoid being caught, Choi Hana used a voice-changing device and chose a middle-aged male character. Therefore, no one in the country could guess that the popular player Clark was actually Choi Hana. However, now that the game had become reality, there was no point in hiding anymore. Choi Hana told her manager that there was no time for jokes and demanded her phone back. The man said he would rather give it to the president and that Hana should try to take it herself. The girl thought that the stubborn man would ruin everything. The world was turning upside down and her phone would still be confiscated. The manager threatened that if she didn't stop, she could be sent to treatment to save her reputation. But Hana refused to give up and demanded to be heard. The manager slipped and fell, and the girl snatched the smartphone from his hands. Choi Hana told the manager to stay where he was. She would be back shortly. First, the girl decided to link her phone number to her account. She had heard that this would allow her to use items and skills just like in the game. The system notified Choi Hana that she had logged in. For registering, the girl immediately received a reward, a magic revolver. The weapon turned out to be tangible and appeared right there in reality. Choi Hana spun it in her hands and shouted that the revolver was real. It was incredible. It really wasn't a dream. The revolver could be fired. Choi Hana couldn't even imagine that one day she would hold it in her hands in real life. A monster's hand appeared from the portal that had formed. Someone shouted that it was very dangerous. And indeed, a monster emerged from the portal. It was Gul. Hana wasn't afraid and said that he looked much more disgusting in real life than in the game. The girl showed off her weapon to the manager. He recoiled in horror. But Choi Hana declared that the ghoul was weak and would fall from the first shot. She took aim and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. Choi Hana was surprised. Why isn't it firing? Could it be fake? The system reported that data synchronization was in progress and to wait. The girl, in despair, decided that this was a joke. She didn't have time for this. Ghoul completely emerged from the portal and growling loudly prepared to pounce on her. Hana, keeping her revolver in her hands, skillfully dodged, and the monster couldn't grab her. But when would this synchronization end? The system finally announced that synchronization was complete. Choi Hana immediately fired, and the bullet pierced the monster's body. The stunned manager looked from the girl to the destroyed monster. He asked who she was and what was going on. Choi Hana told him to get his things and leave immediately. She added that she had somewhere to go, so the manager would have to deal with it himself. The girl explained that she needed to meet someone who knew everything about the battles in this game. His name was K. Underground parking lot. There were even more overturned and destroyed cars. Our hero stood next to the destroyed monster boss. The monster's head lay nearby. The young man was completely calm, studying the information on the display that had popped up. The infected tree of nature was unable to transform, and the group managed to defeat the F-rank boss, the infected entity. The monsters disappeared, but the destruction of the building and traces of blood remained. It can be assumed that there will be no raids here for some time. The player received information about the training quest, Labyrinth of Choice. In the Labyrinth of Choice, you must complete each stage of the selected difficulty. This is the final training task, and upon completion, the player gains a skill. The protagonist said that stopping the transformation is not the end, but the beginning. The young man decided to go through the training again. This place turned out to be real. A real map from the Dreamside training. The boy could smell everything around him, and even feel the temperature. It was hard to believe that such settings were possible. Before the young man was the Labyrinth of Choice, the final part of the training, where the player is awarded a skill depending on the level chosen. Although the skill is the same in each case, choosing the easy level results in an F rank, while completing the Hell level can earn an A rank skill. In a normal situation, our hero would choose the Hellish skill, but there is a problem. The Hellish level is designed so that it is impossible to pass. The problem of choosing the difficulty level has not been fixed even after numerous complaints from players. The Hell difficulty has become an unattainable goal in the eyes of the people, but one player managed to pass this level, and his name was K. However, it is worth remembering how many times he died. Besides, now everything is completely different. The young man read the information and was surprised. Why were there so many people here? Were they all players? Were so many people undergoing training? This meant that the current events were taking place over a fairly large area, at least throughout the entire country. Or maybe the information applied to the whole world. There were many lifeless bodies around him. Our hero silently prayed that no one would die. However, the guy decided that he had to think about himself first. In the end, the protagonist chose the Hell level. The player received his first task: to protect a statue of a goddess from golems in a limited space within a set time. The time limit was 5 minutes. The time limit was a feature of the Hellish difficulty. However, there was no turning back. Wielding his sword, the protagonist fought off the golems and cut the particularly brave ones into pieces. The young man thought that it wasn't as difficult as he had expected. After a short time, the golems were destroyed. Our hero achieved this thanks to his heavenly body skill. The real difficulties were only just beginning. Golems of a completely different level appeared. The system reported a decrease in oxygen levels in the room. The monsters became more active. Kang Sojun's reaction time slowed by half a second. Proportional to the time remaining, the player's movement slowed down, while the monsters sped up. After 2 minutes, the player's reaction time decreased by 1.5 seconds. The speed and strength of the monsters increased by 15%. At this stage, the player had to anticipate the monsters' movements and stay ahead of them. The true horror of Hellish difficulty was just beginning. Kang Sojun wondered if it made sense to take such a risk in training. The system reported that the player had successfully completed the hidden task. As a result, a hidden stage was unlocked. Completing the hidden task earned a reward, characteristics points that were not available at other difficulty levels. In this case, Kang Sojun could only receive the reward after completing the current stage. The young man began to approach the giant monster again. He was completely confident in his abilities. The player put away his sturdy long sword and took out a twisted physical damage hammer. Kang Sojun said that it was time to take this boss seriously. The young man swung his hammer and added that the monster could come closer. The protagonist thought, if this was a training mob, defeating it would be as simple as reducing its HP to 0. His weak spot was also discovered: a synthetic core on his stomach. However, this core was too high and currently out of reach. In the game, things were different. Here, Kang Seo-jun couldn't jump that high. The young man decided to force the monster to lower itself and began to taunt it, maneuvering in close proximity. After that, Kang Seo-jun jumped as high as he could and brought his hammer down directly onto the synthetic core. The golem lost its balance and collapsed unconscious. The protagonist climbed onto the monster. The system announced that the player had completed the first stage of training. Kang Seo-jun noted that the hammer had saved him some time. Information has been received that a player has earned a large number of experience points and unlocked the Dragon Eyes skill. However, this was only the first stage of many that still lay ahead. Even in the first dream side, it took player K a month to complete the training. Kang Seo-jun continued to move toward his goal and successfully completed the tasks. Our hero, sword in hand, said that it was too easy. He added that he loved the hellish difficulty. In this case, the training monster was a transforming slime. Kang Seo-jun said he loved smurfing. He plunged a dagger into a tree. The young man asked, "Where is he going?" The guy added, "Did he really think he could go unnoticed?" In this case, the Dragon Eyes skill allowed the player to see the flow of mana. The player successfully completed the hidden task and defeated the Aura of Darkness 3 times on Hell difficulty. Our hero looked up and said that it was time for him to show himself. After completing the secret mission, a hidden file was unlocked. The hidden boss appeared. The woman said that it was very foolish to wake her up. Otherwise, the young man could have survived. He should have just walked by and pretended he hadn't seen anything. This man's arrogance led to his downfall. If a person desires death, it will fulfill his wish. The hidden boss looked around. Where had that man gone? Kang Seo-jun appeared unexpectedly from behind and cut the boss in 2 with his long sword. The woman said that if that had been her real body, this man would already be feeding the worms. But that wasn't the end of it. Kang Seo-jun was surprised. Did she really think his skills were the same as when he first started training? That was a mistake. He told the hidden boss to return to his real body and wait for him, because he would come for her very soon. The system congratulated the player on completing all stages of training in Hell mode. The player would be transferred to the settlement in 5 seconds. The young man said it was time to level up. The system reported that the Hell difficulty labyrinth of choice had been successfully completed, and the player had been returned. 3 months had passed since Kang Seo-jun entered the labyrinth. Our hero did not expect it to take so long. Now he had to search for survivors. Kang Seo-jun decided to assess the situation and stopped at a high school. The students were discussing their next course of action in light of the situation. Some said that they couldn't stop, or they would die. The students demanded explanations from the police officer standing nearby. How long would he remain silent? After all, they only had 1 day left. "Oh, Daizu," the police officer confirmed that there was indeed only 1 day left to clear the underground. The young man was surprised. Was the officer joking? Did he really want to clear out the E-rank underground? Did he really think it would be as easy as in the game? Unlike in the game, the people here only had 1 life. Oh, Daisu replied that he understood them perfectly and was also afraid. He added that they had to go there anyway. After all, a dungeon break was about to happen. A dungeon breakthrough is a phenomenon in which the number of monsters increases dramatically, and they break out. When a dungeon is about to break through, its entrance turns red, and its difficulty gradually rises to the next rank. This was happening at this school. Its level was approaching D rank. The officer thought that none of the people gathered had even passed the difficult level of the labyrinth. They had only cleared F rank dungeons. Once the dungeon reached D rank, it would be the end. If they didn't handle it now, there would be no second chance. After all, if there was another breakthrough, no one would survive. Gon Jivon, a merchant, asked why this dungeon was growing so fast. Oh, Daesu replied that the reason was that the monsters in this dungeon were undead. Such monsters are usually called zombies. Gon Jivon asked how the fact that the monsters are zombies affects the dungeon's rank. The officer explained that the reason was that if a zombie bit a player, they would immediately become infected. Moreover, these zombies can even turn corpses into their own kind. Oh, Daesu noticed that they were near a school that had once been a dungeon. In that school, innocent children were helpless against the undead. The officer added that the players had lost a lot here, but they must continue to fight to protect their homes from the monsters. He added that it was necessary to fight to protect themselves from the changed world. The police officer urged everyone who cared to join the battle. In this world, dungeons had become commonplace. They were no longer considered a disaster that would inevitably destroy lives. Oh, Daesu understood that it was reckless, but in order to survive, they had to succeed. He believed that everything would be fine. Even though they didn't have the best rankers in their ranks, they had Choi Hana with them. The officer once again gave the order to clear the dungeon. IFOG apartments. Outside the building, there was not a single living soul, only overturned and abandoned cars. Inside, there were bloodied bodies lying motionless in various positions. The young man searched for survivors. He needed to find other players. Kang So-jun approached the portal near the school. The gate glowed red. The color of the portal directly indicated the difficulty of the dungeon. Red was the most dangerous, blue was an easy dungeon, and green was medium. Red meant that the number of mobs in the dungeon had increased. It was also a sign of an imminent breakthrough, at which point the portal would turn black. The system reported that there were 24 hours left before the breakthrough in the destroyed school. Kang So-jun looked down. Something crunched under his feet. The young man saw some firewood and noticed that it was still warm. That meant that not much time had passed since they entered the dungeon. It was encouraging that there was still enough time left before the breakthrough. However, the system began to warn them. There were 22 hours left until the breakthrough, then 21. What was happening? Such an acceleration of the timer could only mean one thing. Something was artificially influencing the breakthrough process. If nothing was done, monsters would soon pour out, destroying everything around them. They had to hurry. The dungeon had to be cleared before the breakthrough began. Kang So-jun added that if nothing was done, everyone in the dungeon would die. In addition, they had to find out why the acceleration had started. Or was it them? The structure of the dungeon changes depending on its level. F-rank rooms remain unchanged, but E-rank dungeons enlarge objects and rooms to sizes several times larger than human height. Our hero crossed the gate and found himself in an empty school classroom. The situation in which the structure of the dungeon expands is called expansion. One of these huge desks could easily fit an entire class. As expected of an E rank, it was very different from an F rank. Our hero was still at a low level, so he couldn't relax. Suddenly, a skeleton appeared in the classroom. A level 40 creature possessed by a cursed spirit. A weapon appeared in the hero's hands. A long, sturdy sword. Kang So-jun swung and prepared to repel the attacking skeleton's attack. The player thrust the sword forward, and the skeleton clamped its teeth onto it. This action proved to be very timely. To destroy the skeleton, it was necessary to find its core. Its weak point was its neck. Kang So-jun decided to banish the cursed spirit from this very spot. With a huge long sword, the hero cut off the skeleton's head and split the core. The system announced that the player's level had increased. The skeleton was destroyed. The protagonist rejoiced, but other skeletons appeared in the room. Kang So-jun wondered why only one had come at first. The player received a new task, Master of Surprise Attacks. He had to attack enemies unexpectedly 100 times in a row. The player successfully completed the task. The hero received the title Master of Surprise Attacks. Kang So-jun decided that he had found a real gold mine. Nearby, destroyed skeletons lay on the ground. However, they were not defeated by our hero. Most likely they were left behind by players who had come here earlier. This news upset the young man. Now he would have to temporarily put his leveling on hold. An explosion rang out in another location. The police officer and players hurriedly left the area. Odesu and the other players managed to hide around the corner. The blast wave passed, but thick smoke enveloped everything around them. The next moment, the players screamed for help. They were surrounded by a crowd of armed skeletons. An hour earlier, in the deserted school, armed players were methodically dispatching mobs. Police officer Odesu thought that everything was going well. The players were confidently handling the situation. Looking around, the officer noted that the fighters were working well together, and everyone was successfully defeating the monsters. Thanks to the player with the revolver, there were few casualties. Choi Hana had not fired a single shot. The girl said that caution was necessary and rushed to help one of the players. Another explosion rang out. Many were knocked to the floor by the shockwave. The police officer didn't understand where they were coming from. Odesu told the players that it was dangerous to stay together and ordered them to split up. The situation was becoming extremely dangerous. In the distance, there were people who might have been controlling the mobs. Who were they? They were definitely people. Such monsters couldn't appear in an E-rank dungeon, so they must be players. Hiding was pointless. Odesu decided that the first priority was to get the remaining people out of there. The officer added that they needed to leave the spell zone as soon as possible. The masked strangers seemed to be targeting the strongest member of the group. Odesu realized he was powerless against these enemies. The masked man was surprised. Hadn't they recognized him yet? He was disappointed. The officer had lost his edge since their last encounter. The police officer thought the voice sounded familiar. Could it be the same man? Odesu remembered the criminal he had once arrested. It was the man who hated women. The villain lifted his mask and said, "Finally, Odesu recognized me." The notorious serial killer Hwang Dong-soo declared that he also recognized the detective from the 2nd Division of the Special Crimes Investigation Department. Oh Dae-soo realized that he was standing before Hwang Dong-soo, who had been sentenced to death for killing 7 people. The officer had worked tirelessly to arrest him 8 years ago. Could this man really be a player? Perhaps his companions were also prisoners. For the officer, this was the worst-case scenario. He couldn't believe that such a scoundrel had managed to become a player. The villain asked if the officer was hoping for a sudden savior. There was no point in building illusions. Hwang Dong-soo said that his men had already killed everyone. Suddenly, another explosion rang out, and fragments of the wall flew in all directions. The hero entered the room. Kang So-jun was surprised to see a man there. But why was he wearing a mask? Hwang Dong-soo realized that an unwanted witness had appeared. The hero wondered, had they already fought? The villain asked the young man who he was. Oh Dae-soo shouted for the guy to run away immediately. It was too dangerous to stay. Hwang Dong-soo realized that he shouldn't have interrupted him, whoever this young man was. He snapped his fingers again. Another explosion rang out, and the hero disappeared in a ball of flames. Oh Dae-soo thought, another victim? This masked villain was incredibly strong. Our heroes activated the threat detection skill. In the smoke left after the explosion, the rivals couldn't see each other. Kang So-jun activated Dragon Eyes and realized that a masked man was involved. Compared to the maze of choices, dealing with him would be easier. During the explosion, the protagonist managed to react and jump to a safe zone at a sufficient distance. Kang So-jun thought, judging by his movements, the masked man was a serial player killer. His second nickname is Red Player. That's what they call those who often destroy other players. In Dreamside, everyone has only 3 lives, so such people are considered the embodiment of evil, and even the developers recognize them as a malignant tumor. These villains ruined raids, including our heroes. Kang So-jun thought that such players needed to be eliminated. It was clear that it wasn't a mob that was causing trouble here, but the man in the mask. Hwang Dong-soo told the young man to mind his own business and get out of there. The villain promised to let him go if he agreed to leave now. Kang So-jun asked if the masked man would really let him go just like that. A police officer shouted that he was a serial killer named Hwang Dong-soo. Our hero thought he had heard that name on the news. Could this villain have escaped from prison? Kang So-jun pulled out his longsword and said he wasn't going to leave his enemies behind. The protagonist activated threat detection and Dragon's Eye. Kang So-jun swung his sword, and Kang Woo-jong died from our hero's attacks. The system reported that the player had obtained Tough Upper. Kang So-jun reminded his opponent of the saying, "With great power comes great responsibility." Our hero added that it was time for the fugitive criminal to face the consequences. Hwang Dong-soo thought that combining fire and gas was an excellent idea. But how did this boy figure it all out? The protagonist activated a weapon change, and his dagger struck another target. Kang So-jun said that adding the isolation skill to this would greatly increase defense. The system reported that player Ji Mung-sang had been destroyed. The protagonist received the birch staff. Our hero looked at the main villain and said that now it was his turn. Kang So-jun moved close to his opponent and looked him boldly in the eyes. The villain used his abilities, and under the impact of the blast wave, our hero was thrown far back. Kang So-jun remained standing and drawing his weapon, prepared to counterattack. The criminal was destroyed, and Kang So-jun's level increased. Kang So-jun said that the system had already recognized them as mobs. Hwang Dong-soo had destroyed countless players. There was no need to blame himself for his death. Our hero obtained the item Dungeon Grass. Kang So-jun now understood why the villains were in such a hurry. It was time for him to hurry as well. The officer gave his name and said he was from the police. Hwang Dong-soo was a villain and a scoundrel. The officer thanked the protagonist for saving him. Kang So-jun replied that this man deserved to be punished. Oh Dae-soo said he had a request. He and his team had been ambushed, so they had to split up. There were at least 10 attackers. The officer stated that they had checked the attackers and found that they were all criminals. It can be assumed that the prisoners had become players. The monsters did not react to the masked criminals, as if they had a special item. Their target was the skilled marksman Clark, Choi Hana. Kang So-jun was very surprised. Was that really possible? Kang So-jun wondered if the skilled marksman was really Choi Hana. Oh Dae-soo and Kang So-jun were traveling along a deserted road. There were people in green cloaks on their backs. The protagonist said he never would have thought that the sharpshooter was a girl. The police officer admitted that he was also surprised. Moreover, it turned out to be Choi Hana. Who would have thought? Oh Dae-soo remarked that it was surprising to learn that an idol singer was an excellent player. The 12th ranked player, Clark, earned the nickname Magic Shooter for his skill with weapons. When it came to shooting or firearms, he was unmatched. Kang So-jun said that Choi Hana was a whale. This is a special type of player who invests huge amounts of money in the game, far exceeding the average donation level. The officer said he hadn't played in a long time. Our hero still couldn't believe it. Choi Hana and Clark seemed completely different. Oh, Dae-soo confirmed that these items really work. The mobs did not react to them along the entire route. Although he was worried at first, the idea turned out to be a success. Kang So-jun said he had his doubts too. Since they couldn't take the items belonging to the criminals out of their inventory, they decided to use their skills and enhancements. This decision turned out to be the right one, as their effects would disappear a day after their owners died. The young people arrived at the gym. It was the final destination of their route. The bodies of the destroyed undead lay everywhere. Oh, Dae-soo admitted that it had made an impression on him. The system reported that there were 3 hours left until the breakthrough. Kang So-jun declared that he no longer had any doubts. Someone was speeding up the breach. A message about the dungeon grass appeared on the information board. This grass cannot be sold in a store. It has a different purpose. It is used to accelerate the breakthrough of the dungeon. The acceleration can be obtained from a flower created from the grass and water of the dungeon. Kang So-jun noted that this was strange. Water is needed to create the flower, and it can only be obtained in dungeons of rank B and above. In that case, someone they met had been playing long enough to get dungeon water as a reward for the server closing. Kang So-jun thought that most of the prisoners would not have been able to choose an item when the server closed. Someone else was clearly involved. Our hero hoped that Choi Hana was safe now. At that moment, Choi Hana, holding the reward revolver in her hands, dodged the arrows flying toward her. The girl looked at the masked men and thought they were starting to annoy her. Right now, Choi Hana was fighting the E-rank boss, the Knight of Doom Vodnisi. Vodnisi activated a vertical strike. Choi Hana managed to jump aside at the last moment. She thought that even though it was an E-rank monster, its defense was terrible, and she could take advantage of that. Choi Hana knew that her opponent was fighting with a sword, so his attacks were easy to predict. The opponents worked well together. She was dealing a lot of damage. Now the girl saw one significant problem. The masked men were aiming their arrows directly at her. Choi Hana hid behind cover and told them to stop. How can he shoot such a cute girl like me? She thought. But why wasn't the Death Knight attacking them? Were they immune? Choi Hana asked herself. Are they even human? The elder ordered his comrades to keep shooting the girl without waiting for a command. Choi Hana warned that if they did, she would destroy them all. However, she understood that these were real players and that she couldn't shoot them. The monster roared loudly, opened its mouth, and the girl saw a glowing core in its mouth. Choi Hana decided to focus and pull herself together. She understood that this was not a game, but reality, and she had no other choice. Choi Hana made a decision. She stepped out from behind her cover. The enemy was in front of her. A shot rang out, and the bullet flew straight at the man in the mask. At that moment, the villain was struck in the forehead, a direct hit. Choi Hana was now exposed to her opponents. However, all the enemies were confused after their leader was killed. The system reported that player Yang Hyun-jun had been killed. The archers regained their composure and opened fire again. The system reported that the girl had received a poison potion. Choi Hana managed to hide behind cover, and the arrows flew past her. The monster intensified its attacks, swinging its axe in all directions. Choi Hana realized that although the monster was strong, it didn't have much time left. The girl didn't understand why her health was decreasing even when she dodged. Why was everything so real? There were 3 hours left until the breakthrough. Now Choi Hana realized that the process had accelerated. With her level, it was impossible to defeat a Y-rank monster in 3 hours. If the breakthrough of the dungeon accelerated, she had to defeat the monster immediately. Otherwise, it would move up to D rank. Choi Hana stepped back into the line of fire and took aim at the dungeon boss. The system reported that the Knight of Doom would be unconscious for 5 seconds. Choi Hana activated the Blood Ball skill. The monster was inside the activated Blood Ball. This was followed by a shot to the back of the head. Choi Hana knew she had to destroy it with one shot. At that moment, Kang So-jun shouted for Choi Hana to leave immediately. A shot rang out, but the bullet did not hit its target. The girl was surprised. What was that? Choi Hana thought that she didn't have enough endurance. Could she really die? Suddenly, a barrier appeared that lasted for 3 seconds. Kang So-jun grabbed the girl and moved her to a safe distance. The young people were out of range and were able to take a short break. Kang So-jun asked Choi Hana if she was okay. The monster began to transform and, raising its head, let out a loud roar. Choi Hana said that the monster had just leveled up. If it became a D-rank boss, it would be impossible to defeat. The young people were now facing a D-rank boss, Lord Demon Von DC. Immediately after transforming, the monster needed time to use its new powers. Kang Seo-jun thought this was their chance. Choi Hana warned the people nearby that they could still escape from the dungeon. The girl insisted that this monster could no longer be destroyed. They had to run away. The young people noticed that the archery had stopped. Their opponents must have run toward the exit. The girl realized that the archers would not let them escape, but it was better to fight them than the boss. The main thing was to save the people. Choi Hana saw the young man heading toward the monster and asked, "You're not going to fight him, are you?" Kang Seo-jun looked at his sword and said that with such a weapon, he would have to work a little harder. He added that he wanted to borrow a weapon from the police officer. It was an 80-level weapon, but he was confident he could handle it. A wave spear appeared in our hero's hands, a magical spear that creates waves that increase attack power. If incompatible with the player, the spear will not reveal its full power and will be sealed. Choi Hana was surprised. How did he awaken the magical spear? After all, it is impossible to do so if the level is below 80. It turned out that the player had increased his strength and was able to lift it while she was holding the blood orb. The protagonist said it was time to begin. The girl realized that she was facing a high-level player. The D-rank monster eagerly awaited the upcoming battle. The protagonist activated Dragon Eyes to find the monster's weak points. Kang Seo-jun calmed down. After the transformation, the weak spot had not changed. He activated circular waves around the D-rank monster. The monster struck with its sword, but Kang Seo-jun, who was with Mila, jumped aside. Kang Seo-jun guessed that the monster couldn't use its defense. It was still transforming. The young man added that they could handle it. Choi Hana asked who he was and where he got such a high-level potion. Kang Seo-jun replied that it didn't matter. The main thing was to get ready quickly, otherwise the healing potion would destroy her. Choi Hana said she was going to do that anyway. The girl aimed her revolver at the huge monster again. Choi Hana fired a series of shots, all of which hit their target. Lord Demon Von DC stopped for 3 seconds. Kang Seo-jun said it was his turn and activated the frenzied waves. The monster suffered multiple Guantongshang, incompatible with its existence. The system announced that the D-rank boss, Lord Demon Von DC, had been defeated. The players' levels increased. The destroyed school was cleared. At the exit of the dungeon, masked people prepared to meet Clark. This player was part of their plan. He couldn't be left alive. However, Clark did not show up. It was speculated that he might have been killed by a D-rank monster. Despite all her skills, she hadn't reached level 80. Even Clark would have a hard time dealing with such a boss. The leader of the masked men said he was waiting for a report on what was happening. The masked men received information that the breakthrough of the dungeon had been halted, and that monsters could no longer appear there. What was going on? Information appeared on the smartphone screen that the blacklist had disappeared from the labyrinth of choice. The leader of the masked men said that they were retreating, and that K was missing. Kang Seo-jun thanked the police officer for providing him with a weapon. Choi Hana asked our hero if he was K. Kang Seo-jun said that the girl was right. He was K. Choi Hana couldn't believe it. The police officer was impressed by this player's abilities, but the #1 ranker had left the labyrinth of choice. Even if that was the case, it was impossible for him to have left there and immediately come here during the dungeon collapse. The chance of such a coincidence was negligible. Choi Hana thought the same. The girl had come here only to meet K. There are stories about places that never became dungeons. However, it is unknown who is behind them. That's why Choi Hana thought he was K. However, it was just a misunderstanding. Kang Seo-jun repeated once again that he was K. Choi Hana apologized, saying she had been very wrong. She should have thanked him first for saving her. Kang Seo-jun suggested that they first look for survivors, an abandoned school storage room. This place is a temporary shelter for the wounded and all the survivors. Dae-soo expressed his joy that so many had survived. They had feared that no survivors would be found at all. It turned out that everyone had simply hidden well. Those survivors who felt well helped the wounded. Dae-soo said that no one should be blamed. It was good that many had survived. The officer asked the injured man how he was feeling and if he could move. The man replied that they had enough greenery, so he would be back on his feet soon. Kang Seo-jun was also glad that the people had escaped and survived. In the end, the players would become stronger. Let the detective think otherwise, but he will be useful. The girl asked Choi Han how she was feeling. Choi Hana replied that she had messed up a little, but it wasn't a big deal. Dae-soo said that now they could go to the camp. Kang Seo-jun could join them. Our hero remembered the confrontation with the monsters. Choi Hana didn't surprise him. But who was this officer? Kang Seo-jun thought that all the monsters outside were F-level. They had escaped from the dungeon during the rift. Since they had lived in small spaces for a long time, they wouldn't go into similar ones here. They must have chosen this place by accident. but the location turned out to be fortunate. There were many civilians at the subway station trying to hide from the monsters. The young people saw the detective and were happy that he had returned. Odaisu was once again glad that everyone was safe, and the feeling was mutual. The police officer approached the old man and asked how he was feeling. The old man said he was unharmed and offered the police officer a rest. He would bring him some food. Odaisu told Kang Seo-jun to rest while he prepared something to eat. The young man agreed. Kang Seo-jun sat down and felt tired. A lot had happened that day. The dungeon, the dead people, the fierce battle with the monsters. Although it wasn't extremely difficult, it was nerve-wracking. Our hero suddenly remembered that he had completely forgotten to check the reward for defeating the boss. Now was the perfect time to do so. The reward was Wondisi's Blade of Regret. The young man wondered how a detective could use a spear if he wasn't at level 80. Did that mean a small discrepancy was acceptable? The problem was that the player's reward wasn't just a weapon. The young man had a sealed book in his hands. It was impossible to use it without access. However, the conditions for opening it had not been met. Kang Seo-jun regretted that he couldn't even use the book. Since it was a legendary item, it was precisely because of this book that he had come. A squirrel appeared in our hero's hand. The young man said that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Kang Seo-jun touched the squirrel's nose, and Goran woke up at his master's command. A loud rumbling could be heard in the animal's stomach. Goran was famished and needed nutritious food. Goran is our hero's pet, who followed him to Dreamside. Kang Seo-jun was, of course, glad that Goran had regained consciousness, but his reaction was somewhat peculiar. There could only be one reason for this: the dungeon. Things aren't so bad now. He's in the form of a squirrel. However, his true form was that of a monster devouring the dungeon. It was the monster Gregory. Gregory's monster was Kia's former pet, whom he had met on the 50th level and rewarded for closing the 3rd server. Gregory eats nothing but monsters from the dungeon. That's why when Goran acts restless, it means something is happening in the dungeon. The problem is that it started in a place where there are a lot of people. Kang Seo-jun watched the pet in surprise. What is it reacting to? He's not interested in the players at all. The young people were chatting calmly and animatedly with each other. Kang Seo-jun thought it must be the skeletons. Some mobs could have been freed during the dungeon's collapse. Skeletons are E-level monsters with low intelligence. So either something was wrong with Goran, or he was showing his master that he was hungry. What was happening here seemed strange. The fact that Goran specialized in smells was a disadvantage. It was unclear what exactly was attracting him. The wounded man lay in a makeshift tent and said he felt terrible, that his days were numbered. Kang Seo-jun now understood what was going on. It seemed that this wounded man was on the verge of death. Officer Odaisu explained to those present what they needed to do. The young man was surprised. Were they really supposed to destroy the skeletons? But that was dangerous, and besides, the dungeon was closed. One of those present said that if they hid, the skeletons would leave and everyone would be safe. Indeed, it wasn't worth the risk. Odaisu said that this was precisely the point. If the skeletons scattered in different directions, many people could die because of them. The officer added that this was a chance for them to level up. The monsters are dangerous because of the dungeons, as they receive a dungeon blessing buff from them. Now they have weakened. Plus, it's 3 in the afternoon, and the sun is at its highest point. At this time, the undead are at their weakest. Odaisu said that he wasn't forcing them. Their lives were in their own hands. Therefore, they had to decide for themselves. The young people split into a hunting party. A camp guard squad was also formed. The protagonist couldn't pass up such a chance to level up. Besides, he needed to find something. There were also newcomers among those present. Odaisu suggested that they introduce themselves first and gave his name. The officer added that he felt confident in close combat. Kang Seo-jun thought that this police officer had special training. His potential was higher than everyone else's. One of the young men said his name was Gong Jiwon. He used to be a salesman. Jiwon said he would do his best and thanked them for their attention. Kang Seo-jun was surprised. Why did this player introduce himself as if he were speaking to new classmates? Choi Hana also gave her name and added that she was level 79. She was skilled with firearms. Kang Seo-jun thought that there was no need for the girl to tell him more about herself. She was so popular that everyone already knew her. Besides, if you reveal too much about yourself, it could come back to haunt you in the future. One of the players said his name was Jang Gi-yeon. Before the incident, he worked for his father's company and had houses in Gangnam and Socho. He came here to buy another one. He had even hired a butler, but now he would have to use public transportation. Kang Seo-jun thought that, judging by his equipment, he had played in the first Dreamside. The equipment was expensive, but as it turned out, it was weak. Jang Gi-yeon said that if the players followed him, they would be safe. The police officer pointed at our hero and said that the people present definitely didn't know this player. Jang Gi-yong said that the guy's name was Kang So-jun. Our hero was surprised. Did they know each other? Jang Gi-yong said, no doubt about it. Jang Gi-yong added that this guy went to Banjo High School. He was a typical victim. Kang So-jun remembered this guy. They had indeed known each other in school. Jang Gi-yong said he recognized Kang So-jun by his eyes. Our hero noted that Jang Gi-yong had changed a lot, as if he had been reborn. Jang Gi-yong recalled the days when Kang So-jun used to bring him food. Choi Hana was outraged. How could he say such a thing? After all, they were only alive thanks to Kang So-jun. Choi Hana demanded that Jang Gi-yong apologize immediately. The other players said that now was not the time to argue. They could sort things out later. The protagonist said his name was K. The tension grew. No one expected to hear that name. Choi Hana first screamed, then said that her intuition had not failed her. It really was K. Oh Dae-soo said that he was right to be surprised that this guy was such a good fighter. He apologized for the misunderstanding. Jang Gi-yong said that this guy was cheating. It couldn't be true. However, Jang Gi-yong remembered that a t-shirt like the one Kang So-jun was wearing came from the boss of Wondisi, but that couldn't be true. Clark must have helped him. Jang Gi-yong decided that this guy had to be exposed. He asked what Kang So-jun's level was. Our hero replied, 37. Jang Gi-yong suggested that this guy was cheating. He must have decided to pretend out of boredom. Jang Gi-yong said that Kang So-jun probably didn't know that K-pop wasn't Korean. Before pretending, he should have gathered information. After the argument ended, the young people continued on their way through the city, taking precautions. Kang So-jun activated his Dragon Eyes skill and saw all the skeletons hiding. 2 of them were in an alley. Kang So-jun said that one was hiding in the left corner. There was also a skeleton under a car. Kang So-jun identified the danger ahead and told everyone to prepare for battle. There were too many skeletons, and the young people were surrounded. The police officer told the players to team up and work in pairs. Choi Hana activated her intensive fire mode and effectively repelled the undead's attacks. Jang Gi-yong told his old acquaintance to let the rookie go first, saying he would show him how professionals do it. Jang Gi-yong effectively neutralized several skeletons and shouted that there was a big difference between him and the newcomer. Kang So-jun remembered that Jang Gi-yong was a good guy. He asked him to bring him food and gave him a certain amount of money. Since he was rich, he didn't know how much food cost. It was like a job that paid a decent amount every day. Kang So-jun decided to forgive Jang Gi-yong for his quirks if he could ever make money with his help. Now it's time to focus on more important matters to raise your level. Goron was released and began devouring equipment and skeletons. Kang So-jun wondered, has Goron not had enough yet? Does he sense something tasty nearby? The protagonist knocked out another skeleton that had approached within arm's reach. One of the players said that the sun would soon set. The undead would get a buff again, so they needed to return. The police officer looked at the players who had already managed to level up and thought that progress was being made. Kang So-jun sat in front of Goron. Oh Dae-soo asked what the young man was doing. Kang So-jun told the squirrel that he had eaten enough. Where was what he needed? Oh Dae-soo suggested returning to camp to rest. Kang So-jun said that they needed to stop by one place first. It was a flower shop. Kang So-jun told everyone to hold their breath. Our hero discovered a dungeon called the Garden of Doom. A task appeared. It was necessary to eliminate the virus and remove the King of Flowers, who was spreading the virus spores through the Garden of Doom. The reward would be the King of Flowers bud. Kang So-jun thought that this was what Goron had reacted to at the Banjo station. The man's face turned red, and his fingers darkened from the dungeon. There are different dungeons in Dreamside. Ordinary ones, like an abandoned school inhabited by goblins and corpses. Themed ones, decorated in a certain style. And gardens of doom, where motionless flower mobs live. When a rift occurs in the latter, it releases virus spores instead of mobs. There are many symptoms that indicate a person has been infected. The coronavirus enters the body and becomes a parasite that turns people into monsters. The people at Banjo Station are like NPCs in a game. The virus will affect all players who have no resistance. However, players with E-class resistance should be fine. The spread of the virus must be stopped. Kang So-jun realized that the sun would soon set below the horizon. One of the players said that the mobs would soon become stronger. The players would be the perfect target for them. The police officer said he knew that. But the red color of the portal meant that there was little time left before the rupture. If they left it like that and allowed it to turn into a D-rank dungeon, not only would they be in danger, but so would everyone at Banjo Station. Why did they only find it now? Perhaps it was hidden behind an inconspicuous door. The players weren't sure if they should go back. But what could they do? There wasn't much time left. Oh Dae-soo suggested entering the dungeon. The young people did so, deciding to figure things out as they went along. Next, the players had to move along a forest path. Kang Seo-joon thought that everything had turned out for the best, and that he couldn't ask for more. The players decided to conduct a small raid. The best players were sent to the dungeon, and the rest to the camp. Kang Seo-joon thought that he, Choi Hana, and Oh Dae-soo would be enough. But at least 4 players were needed to enter, so they took Jang Gi-yeon with them. His equipment was good for defense, and he was also a high-level player. Jang Gi-yeon was surprised and asked the detective why they needed a low-level cheater. They should go back and get someone better. Jang Gi-yeon didn't even realize who the weak link was. Jang Gi-yeon continued and added that he didn't agree with this choice. Jang Gi-yeon picked a fruit from a tree and wanted to try it. Kang Seo-joon said not to touch it. Jang Gi-yeon said that it was an underground apple. The riper it was, the more mana it would give. Suddenly, a shot rang out, and the apple flew out of the young man's hands. The branch of the plant was also damaged. Choi Hana, with a revolver in her hand, said that they needed to be more careful of their surroundings. Jang Gi-yeon looked up and saw thorny vines hanging over him. The young man even cried out in surprise. Jang Gi-yeon mentally thanked the girl. Oh Dae-soo thought he had made the wrong choice. The young people approached the boss's room. The boss of this dungeon was in a greenhouse. The name of this bloodthirsty monster was King of Flowers. This flower looked like a sunflower because it often witnessed human deaths. Kang Seo-joon told Jang Gi-yeon to be careful. This mob king was stronger than usual. Moreover, once defeated, you can obtain a flower bulb that can be used as an antidote. Grind it into a paste and make a tincture, and you'll have a cure for the dungeon disease. It can be used to heal the sick at Banjo Station. Kang Seo-joon added that this was their only hope. Everyone hoped they would succeed. Jang Gi-yeon told everyone to trust him, that he would handle it. The players covered their noses with their fingers again. The smell was even worse than before. Why do flowers smell like sewage? Sunflower opened its mouth, and thorny vines flew out of its mouth. It was a planned attack. Kang Seo-joon shouted for everyone to dodge. Oh Dae-soo was already rushing to help. The Mob King launched a surprise attack. Choi Hana aimed her revolver and fired to kill. The flower monster's attack was repelled, and its longest tentacles were cut off. Jang Gi-yeon told Kang Seo-joon to step aside because he was in the way. Gi-yeon added that he would deal with this boss himself. Kang Seo-joon suddenly grabbed his companion by the collar and pulled him back sharply. Jang Gi-yeon was outraged. Had this rookie lost his mind? Kang Seo-joon told him to watch his step. Right under Jang Gi-yeon's feet, a flower appeared from the ground. He was ready to attack the player. Jang Gi-yeon screamed in fear and surprise. Our hero said that there would be others near the king. That was obvious. It was not worth getting involved if you did not understand that. The protagonist activated the Dragon Eyes skill. To get close to the boss, he had to cross a field littered with such flowers. If he took a step forward, the flowers would pounce on him like piranhas. Oh Dae-soo said that they had no choice but to trust Choi Hana. Kang Seo-joon replied that it would take too long. The monster would become D-level by then. If she entered the blood sphere state, she would receive buffs from them and increase the area of damage from her magic bullets. Only then would she be able to defeat them all. Choi Hana said she could handle it, provided she took the elixir. The girl ordered one portion of the elixir from our hero. Kang Seo-joon refused the girl. He said that because of the others, he had no chance to level up, and that was very important. Jang Gi-yeon was surprised. When will Kang Seo-joon run? He can't do it. Our hero, cutting through the vines that were trying to entangle him, moved forward, approaching the monster boss. Jang Gi-yeon couldn't believe his eyes. Could this guy really make it to the boss? The police officer couldn't understand how Kang Seo-joon could do such a thing at level 37. There was only one explanation. This guy was really a player named K. Oh Dae-soo saw only 2 possibilities. Either his level was actually very high, or he uses an unbalanced ability. Kang Seo-joon reached his target and, with a loud cry, sliced the monster boss in half with his long sword. Choi Hana screamed that it was amazing. Oh Dae-soo was also impressed. Jang Gi-yeon remained silent and lowered his eyes. Kang Seo-joon, as always, said it was easy. The system announced that the players' levels had been raised. Our hero received a reward, a flower bulb. The player also received Kakashi's spiked glove. Kang Seo-joon stood in the middle of the severed tentacles of the monster boss. The loot turned out to be better than our hero had expected. The glove was made from the body and spikes of the King of Flowers. If necessary, it can transform the hand into a short sword. Thanks to his heavenly body skill, our hero has no restrictions on the use of weapons, so this glove will come in handy. Our hero has leveled up 10 times since completing his training. With the points he has accumulated over 90 days of training and his skills, he will soon be able to clear D-rank dungeons with ease. Thus, a clear line has been drawn between Kang Seo-joon and the other players. Only Jang Gi-yeon couldn't believe that Kang Seo-joon was such a strong player. Could he really be K? The travelers stopped and looked around. There was destruction everywhere. A battle had taken place here. Destroyed skeletons lay scattered everywhere. There were also the bodies of players. Dae-soo checked their pulses and said that the players were already dead. It seemed that something bad had happened at the camp. The players reached the banjo station. Choi Hana asked if anyone was there. Kang So-jun saw human footprints at the station. However, these footprints led in different directions. Dae-soo shouted loudly for someone to respond. He thought it was a symptom of the underground disease. A police officer stated that there were no signs of skeletons here. This meant that the cause was the progression of the disease. Choi Hana noted that the underground had already been cleared. How could the virus have spread so quickly? Suddenly, the players heard someone's voice. The person was asking for help. Our heroes saw a player lying on the ground, his body covered with rocks. Dae-soo used his strength to scatter the stones in different directions. The player breathed a sigh of relief. A police officer shouted for the young man to wake up and share what he knew. The protagonist wanted to use a potion, but it couldn't be used on the target. A revival potion was needed. Kang So-jun thought it was a system warning of death. The victim's legs were in terrible condition, and his nerves were damaged. Without a revival potion, the young man could not be saved. Dae-soo offered the victim a paralysis potion to stop him from feeling pain. The victim took a few sips and came to. A detective was standing in front of him. The police officer asked what had happened. The young man said that it all happened suddenly. A huge monster appeared on the stairs. The players were preparing to lead it to the traps outside, as they had practiced. However, danger was waiting for them from behind. People began to turn into zombies and attack them. The young man listed everyone who had been injured. The system reported that the player was in a state of madness. Kang So-jun thought that if they had a healer with them, they could have cured him and wouldn't have to worry about the virus. However, there were no healers at Banjo Station, so there was nothing that could be done to help the young man. Kang So-jun realized that the third stage of this disease was turning into a monster. The first stage manifests itself in a change in the color of the fingers and chills. However, over time, the person transforms into the second stage, a zombie that attacks others. Only when completely exhausted does the monster enter the third stage. Kang So-jun thought that the Garden of Death had already been cleared, but the third stage came quickly, even though the symptoms had only just begun to develop. What contributed to this? The victim talked a little more and lost consciousness. He did not survive. Dae-soo said they should keep going. Everyone agreed with him. Suddenly, a monster appeared from the depths of the dark corridor. Choi Hana reacted instantly and shot the monster through the head. The girl said that if the transformation had taken place, the person could no longer be cured. Did Kai know this? Kang So-jun nodded affirmatively. Those who couldn't survive the underground disease lie here, and the rest have gone their separate ways. The undead reappeared. The police officer told everyone present to take on at least one monster. Kang So-jun, wielding a long sword, entered the fray and destroyed the undead standing in his way. Kang So-jun said that now everyone could follow him. Dae-soo breathed a sigh of relief. Dae-soo added that there was nothing to worry about. The young people made their way to the neighboring Sinpong station. Kang So-jun thought that this station was a ghost town. It had been abandoned when the plan to build the 10th line failed. Choi Hana saw the footprints again and said they were still fresh. Kang So-jun noted that these footprints also led in different directions. The police officer suggested that they were heading to Yongdongpo Station. The players had originally planned to go there in case of an emergency. It was possible to reach the station by following the tracks. Kang So-jun noticed glowing eyes in the darkness deep inside the tunnel. Without hesitation, he thrust his sword forward and prepared to fend off the monster's attack. Dae-soo shouted for everyone to get ready. Choi Hana asked in fear if John Woo was talking about her. A monster emerged from the darkness. It was Cho Yu-jin. Kang So-jun said that now this was the monster they had to deal with. For destroying it, they would gain experience and items. Such was the outcome of the dungeon's disease. It turned people into monsters. Kang So-jun thought that thousands of people had died in the first Dreamside because of the disease. However, now the fate of the entire world was at stake. Kang So-jun promised to finish off this monster very quickly, as the stakes were extremely high. The protagonist noted that he needed to finish it off with one blow. During the clash, our hero realized that this monster was very strong. Its extra arms served as a shield. Kang So-jun swung his sword and cut off the extra arms. The monster opened its mouth, and another long, clinging arm appeared. Dae-soo said he would do what he could to help. Kang So-jun told the officer to stay where he was. Most attacks would be useless against this monster. The police officer thought the monster was in its third stage. Choi Hana noted that they would have to wait. Kang So-jun moved around the monster, looking for its weak spot. Kang Seo-jun ended up behind it and found a vulnerable spot, its neck. Our hero apologized to Yu Jin and cut off the monster's head. The battle was over, and the young people had a chance to catch their breath. After completing 3 stages, she became as strong as a D-level monster. Our hero would not have been able to defeat her before. However, during his training, the protagonist managed to accumulate 100 experience points. If he uses them all, he will become 3 times stronger than he is now. The police officer said they were coming. They wouldn't wait for the players to get stronger. Monsters emerged from the dark tunnel. A collision was inevitable. All the monsters were at least D-level. This was the 3rd stage of the disease. The 3rd stage of the disease was called insatiability. These were people who had undergone a transformation. Choi Hana noted that they were just monsters. The players noticed that the monsters were even moving across the ceiling. Jang Gi-yeon noted that they were surrounded. Were the monsters waiting for them to reach the ghost station? Kang Seo-jun said that the first priority was to deal with these monsters. Jang Gi-yeon wasn't scared and approached the undead, attacking it with his sword. However, the monster was unharmed. Jang Gi-yeon wondered in amazement how Kang Seo-jun was able to destroy them. At that moment, our hero approached the monster from behind and cut off its head. Jang Gi-yeon was surprised again. How was that possible? Kang Seo-jun asked his colleagues if they were sure that the others had gone to Yeongdongpo. Choi Hana said that there was a shopping center and other shops nearby, so there would be no problem restocking supplies. Kang Seo-jun noted that in that case, they should also head there. The girl said that it was dangerous now. There would be even more monsters in that direction. Moreover, something was definitely waiting for them ahead. Kang Seo-jun said that even if the survivors didn't go there, he wouldn't change his mind. The policeman asked what the young people were talking about. Kang Seo-jun said he would explain later. For now, everyone should stay close to him. At the same time, the young man began to fend off the attacks of the undead again. Insatiability is a symptom of the 3rd stage of the underground disease. People completely change their appearance. They undergo various transformations. Some grow wings, others grow arms or legs. Sometimes they become thinner or conversely larger. The young man was curious that the type of mutation depended on the person's desire. To deal with them, you had to determine that desire. An extra eye is the embodiment of the desire to see more. Either he was blind in human form and wanted to fix it. Kang Seo-jun approached the monster and pierced its neck with all his strength. Our hero said that it was actually much simpler if one understood the reason. During the battle, the long sword was broken. Kang Seo-jun noted that the weapon was no longer suitable for training. Oh Daisu offered to give him his spear. Kang Seo-jun said that it was not necessary, as he had enough weapons. The player put on Kakashi's spiked glove. Using this glove was more dangerous because it had a smaller attack radius, but it was an effective weapon. Kang Seo-jun decided to test the glove in action and was pleasantly surprised by its capabilities. The monster was destroyed. The young man said it was excellent. Kang Seo-jun activated Dragon's Eye and noted that caution was necessary. They would soon enter his territory. The officer asked who Kang Seo-jun was talking about. The young man confirmed that the trigger was here. Even those monsters don't dare to come here. The red magical pairs. It seems that the enemy is unaware of their arrival. Oh Daesu thought that this monster was practically at the 4th stage. It probably appeared during the rift and thanks to the flower from the dungeon. Kang Seo-jun agreed. Someone fed him the flower, creating a trigger that acts as a source of the disease. The coronavirus enters the body, begins to multiply, and the symptoms worsen. If the trigger is not stopped, the dungeon disease will take over the entire city. The player, who found himself in the monster's clutches, coughed, begging for help. However, the monster killed him, and the player's body fell to the ground. The monster greeted everyone. He asked if these people had come to feed him. The monster inquired whether they would feed him with hearts, subscriptions, and consent to receive notifications. Was that really going to happen? Kang Seo-jun saw the bodies of many players who had arrived earlier lying before him. The smell of blood mixed with the air. How many players had this monster destroyed? Oh Daesu asked who they were. Kang Seo-jun replied that he didn't know for sure. It seemed to be a type of Hydra. The form of the trigger depends on the person's desire before the transformation and before they ate the dungeon flower. It was unlikely that the monster would be the first. So until they encountered the trigger themselves, they wouldn't learn anything new. Choi Hana said that judging by the battle scars that occurred before they reached Panju Station, and if the stories are to be believed, it really did happen. Kang Seo-jun suggested that someone had deliberately brought the trigger here. Judging by the amount of mana, the monster was clearly above level 100. It was probably a D-class boss from the middle dungeon. Kang Seo-jun thought that this boss moved extremely slowly and was not particularly powerful. But in Dreamside, that wasn't enough to win. This wasn't a simple game where you could defeat your opponent with high levels or stats. A player could fight a level 4 monster with a strength rating of over 100. It's worth noting that each monster fights in its own style, depending on the buffs it has or the situation. There have been cases where a low-level monster has defeated strong players. Judging by what our hero saw, the monster's power lies in its endurance. The monster became aggressive, and the players were forced to scatter in different directions. Kang So-jun heard a voice that sounded familiar. The police officer said it was that kid, Choi Man-gi, I think. Jang Gi-yong thought it was the signature tone of a famous blogger. But he should be in prison. Could he have escaped? That blogger was supposed to be executed because he ate human flesh. There had been a lot of talk that it was bird meat, but an examination confirmed that it was human. The sentence was harsh. The blogger was to be executed without the right to clemency. In short, before becoming a trigger, this man was in a hopeless situation. The monster told the players to like and subscribe to his channel. Oh Dae-soo and Jang Gi-yeon were surprised. Did this monster have hands too? The monster's hands suddenly reached out toward the player. Jang Gi-yeon started to run away and shouted in surprise. Why is this monster so fast? The police officer tried to protect Jang Gi-yong with his spear. However, he knew that he couldn't do it alone. Oh Dae-soo suggested that the monster's mobility was due to its huge number of arms. As always, caution was necessary. The monster decided to attack the police officer. Oh Dae-soo turned around and tried to move to a safe distance. The officer thought that in order to gain time for the attack, it was necessary to distract the monster. Oh Dae-soo threw his wave spear at the monster and shouted for Kang So-jun to get ready. Kang So-jun, armed with his unique gloves, jumped high into the air and swung his fist to strike. The blow landed directly on the monster's insatiable jaw. The monster did not expect such aggression from a human. The monster suffered minor injuries but was not seriously hurt. Kang So-jun thought that their strength would not last long if they did not change their tactics. Choi Hana suggested that the monster wanted to finish them off the same way it had done last time on the stream. The monster screamed loudly and continued to move forward. It was impossible to stop it. The monster recognized Choi Hana among the people and declared that she would be its snack. Choi Hana took aim and said that this monster was really insolent. She wouldn't let such a monster eat her. Shots rang out, but to no avail. The girl noted that the monster seemed to be encased in armor. Kang So-jun added that it was very resilient. Strength and speed of reaction would not help defeat such a monster. Even more endurance was needed. Kang So-jun told the girl to cover him. He would try to attack the monster again. Choi Hana replied that she understood. The girl aimed her revolver and shouted for the monster to catch the bullet. Our hero struck the monster's jaw again with his fists. At the same moment, a bullet flew into its mouth. The monster said that wasn't bad. Kang So-jun ran back to a safe distance and prepared for another attack. Oh, Dae-soo said that it was amazing. Such attacks work. At this rate, they would be able to finish off the monster. However, the protagonist noticed that these attacks would only scratch the monster at best. Kang So-jun told his comrades that there was only one option left. At that moment, Jang Gi-yong stepped forward alone to face the monster. The player began to insult and provoke the aggressive enemy, using profanity. The monster opened its mouth and roared loudly at the man. Jang Gi-yong thought that the smell coming from the monster's mouth was unbearable. Oh Dae-soo swung his spear and told the girl to open fire. Once again, it was a coordinated attack. Kang So-jun noted that they needed to distract the monster to give him time to maneuver. Everything should work out. Our hero focused and decided it was time to end this. The skill, Magical Concentration, was activated. Kang So-jun moved decisively toward his huge opponent. The young man said that if the enemy was that strong, he would have to become even stronger. The monster said that new meat awaited him. A protective net appeared between the monster and Kang So-jun. The monster again urged people to like the post. Kang So-jun swung his gloved fist and said that he would not only like the video, but also repost it. He also promised that the entire team would subscribe to the channel. This time, the blow was much stronger. The monster even lost a few teeth. The system announced that the players had defeated Choi Man-gi, the trigger glutton. The reward would be the Ring of Attention. As life left the monster's body, mana also flowed out of it. Our hero didn't understand who had arranged all this, and for what purpose. He simply had to figure it out. The man hiding his face under a hood was surprised. Could it really be K? He was holding a huge glowing ball in his hands. In the capital, he was responsible for only 5 companies, which he occasionally checked to make sure they could grow triggers. But he had never seen anyone so strong. Is Mr. Baegi-chan pretending to be busy again? The question was asked by Kang Min-ho from the company. Baegi-chan took off his hood and looked at his companion. The company was one of Dreamside's organizations, about which little was known. But it was like a tumor, poisoning everything it could reach. By expanding their underground network, they controlled people across the continent. This was evident even in their emblem. The emblem featured a lightning bolt passing through 2 moons. Baek Gi-chan said that Kang Min-ho had arrived just in time. He had found something strange. Baek Gi-chan held out the ball and said that Kai seemed to have survived. According to reports from newbies on the easy difficulty level in the choice mazes, there were no candidates who would be sent to the hell level. Baek Gi-chan added that if Kay really did survive, he would definitely try to stop them. It was necessary to ask the farmers if they had seen anything suspicious. Baek Gi-chan said a moment later that he had already found them. A squad of players with increased speed was moving in the specified direction. A sword piercing Azrai's neck, monsters brutally torn apart under his command, a dungeon that only one person could handle. His true nature was a crook. He still had data that hadn't been erased. By devouring people, he could foresee the current situation on Earth. But Kai, who was supposed to undergo training and die, remained alive. Baek Gi-chan speculated that this guy had changed his activities. Kang Min-ho asked why Baek Gi-chan had frozen. He noticed that they were no longer the people they used to know. Even Kay was now just a trainee. Kang Min-ho added that they should report to the boss anyway. If it was really him, they needed to deal with it immediately. The player ran as fast as he could through the tunnel, fleeing from the aggressive monsters. The young man looked back and thought, "Aren't these monsters tired at all? There can't be any more of them." The guy couldn't believe that they had recently been human. The player also ran to the other side of the station. Would he die without ever meeting Detective Odesu? The young man saw a light approaching and thought, could that be a train? 3 whole months had passed since the power went out. Where did this train come from? The player found himself between 2 dangers. On one side, aggressive monsters, and on the other, a train rushing toward him. The young man jumped aside and ran against the train's movement. At the station, a voice announced that the doors were closing and the train was departing. Everyone was required to take their seats. The player managed to jump inside at the last moment. The monsters remained outside. The voice announced again that the train was leaving the platform. The doors closed and the train pulled away. The player caught his breath. He had survived after all. He had to run away from those monsters. Now he had to get to Yondinpo Station, where the detective was supposed to be. The system reported that the player had entered a Class D-themed dungeon, Ghost Train. After a while, the conductor would start checking tickets, and fare dodgers would become a problem for station staff. The team of players moved at high speed through the underground passage to Yeondong Station. Gaion still couldn't believe that Kang So-jun had defeated that monster. He had suspected as much, but seeing it with his own eyes, he agreed that Kay was indeed powerful. How did Kay manage to defeat the monster at such a low level? Without him, nothing would have worked. Choi Hana looked at Gaion and thought, maybe this is one of the symptoms of the disease? Odesu said that looking at what was happening, he thought no one had survived. The trigger was extremely resilient, and it was too difficult to escape from it. Kang So-jun said that there was definitely at least one survivor. The young man added that it was like fishing. All the survivors were ultimately infected, and some were deliberately left behind as bait. When they encountered the herd, the infected would immediately try to eat them. The triggers were not created for no reason. The disease is getting worse, and one day all humans could turn into triggers. Our hero didn't know who was behind all this, but he had to stop them, especially if they were who he thought they were. The company, NPCs who had turned to the side of evil, could create quests and use them to lure players. They grew in power until one player destroyed everything. Information came in that a player named Kay had entered the system. At that time, Kay was trying to relieve his accumulated stress by destroying the dungeons they had built. The biggest entertainment in Dreamside was destroying the company. Now our hero needs to make sure that this is the same company, and not just imitators among the players. Yeongdong Station was nicknamed the Ghost Station for a reason. Even visibility was poor here. The police officer said that if something went wrong, they already had an escape plan. There were supplies at the station for anyone who happened to be there. They had been hidden there last time. The detective took the supplies with him. Kang So-jun said that was the right thing to do, as supplies were limited. Odesu noticed an open can and guessed that someone had already been there. Kang So-jun asked the detective why the people at Panju Station never became players. After all they had to do was undergo training. Choi Hana explained that at that time, the internet was limited, and other people were unable to join the ranks of players. Kang So-jun asked the girl if she could use the internet. Hana replied that she could. She had just updated her phone. Choi Hana added that only people with a similar switch were allowed to communicate with others. There was also a level system available only to players. At the moment, the only way to become a player is to apply to APK. It is the only remaining base in the city. Panju Station. Masked people watch what remains after the battle. Remains and dismembered bodies lie all around. The masked man thought that Mr. Bae-gi-chan was right. Standing before him was Yoon Ben-go, the head of the third break group of the company. A voice told passengers to take their seats. This was a themed underground station that many had talked about, but few had been able to visit. Previously, this train had always run on the first line, but now it was suddenly on the 10th. The advisor noted that construction work had been carried out here before. Apparently, this line had been laid at that time. The advisor informed Mr. Yoon Ben-go that the train was departing for Yeongdeungpo Station. Such an opportunity was rare. Yoon Ben-go was surprised. Had he really grown so tired of living? This Class D-themed dungeon was under surveillance, but they didn't have access. If they got on the train, they would be stuck there forever. Yoon Ben-go thought that he had not joined the company to die so foolishly. The advisor said that Mr. Bae-gi-chan had ordered them to deal with those scoundrels. Yoon Ben-go pointed out that this was practically impossible. Besides, if these guys got on the train themselves, the goblins would do everything for them. The word APK translates as Ark. Apparently, this is a reference to Noah's Ark. Our hero thought that APK really was the last base in the entire city. Choi Hana noticed that by updating the system, she was able to upgrade the phone itself. So all this time, they had been trying to get into APK. Kang So-jun noted that it was quite possible that all the survivors were there now. Oh Dae-soo suggested that they should hurry up and go there. They couldn't have gotten very far. Suddenly, Goron smelled something delicious nearby. Kang So-jun noticed the glowing spots in the darkness. The young man said that someone was there. All the players ran in the direction Goron had pointed. Choi Hana asked in surprise why they were running after this unknown person. Kang So-jun thought that they were trying to catch up with the survivor from Panju Station. The fleeing man kept looking back. Kang So-jun noticed that he sometimes even slowed down. Apparently he wanted to lure them in. The young people found themselves in a waiting room. They didn't see anyone there. Kang So-jun showed remarkable agility and caught the flying arrow a few centimeters from Jang Gi-yeon's face. Suddenly the room filled with smoke. Amidst the smoke, the arrow attack continued. However, Oh Dae-soo and Kang So-jun successfully repelled these attacks. Kang So-jun came to a logical conclusion. This unknown person had decided to kill them. The attack continued, but Kang So-jun and Choi Hana were faster and successfully dodged the arrows flying at them. Our hero sensed his opponent was very close and, swinging his gloved fist, said he would now show what he was capable of. When the smoke cleared, Kang So-jun saw that it was a goblin standing before him. Kang So-jun thought, could there be a rift in the dungeon nearby? The young man shouted at Hana not to shoot. The goblin prudently raised his hands. However, the shot had already been fired. Kang So-jun realized he hadn't warned them in time. The goblin was wounded in the arm, but not fatally. Hana said she didn't like him. Why leave the goblin alive? Gi-yeon suggested that their master knew something and was willing to trust him completely. Kang So-jun pointed at the goblin and said that this guy wasn't a monster. The young man added that they were looking at a human being. More kobolds emerged from the fog. The protagonist declared that they were all humans. The kobold asked Kang So-jun if they were loan sharks. The kobold introduced himself as Shin Hyung-woo. They were not monsters. The detective remarked that looking at them, it was hard to believe they were humans, and not monsters. Kang So-jun reminded him that monsters' names are highlighted in color. The young man added that they were just ordinary players. Monsters would never be white. Kang So-jun asked the goblin why they had attacked. Did they really hate humans? The kobold gestured that the man was mistaken. The kobold leader explained that it was all because of the loan sharks. Dreamside's opening day. The young man looked around and didn't know how to interpret what he was seeing. There was destruction everywhere, with overturned cars. The guy read the information on the board and activated a strong long sword. Now he understood that he was in a game. The young man had often enjoyed playing Dreamside until he was sent to the army. He had leveled up to almost 200. He also owned many items that could have earned him numerous awards. However, just as he joined the army, the time for exchange came to an end. He was unable to earn any awards. Nevertheless, he was no ordinary rookie. After that, he joined forces with the survivors from Yeongdeungpo. The guy took charge of the team and declared that they would all survive, every last one of them. Thus, they set off for the Labyrinth of Choice. This labyrinth was of normal difficulty. The portal was erased, but the guy made it out at the last moment. The young man believed that the most important thing was that he had survived. This player was the only one who had passed the labyrinth at the normal difficulty level. Since then, they continued to survive, but he remained the central figure in this. Suddenly, mysterious merchants appeared throughout the Yeongdeungpo station. They should not be trusted. However, these merchants looked very friendly and welcoming. They also shared the food and equipment they were selling. The players were very grateful to these merchants. It seemed like a sign of goodwill. However, it turned out to be a scam. The survivors who couldn't pay the merchants sacrificed their player cards, naively believing that it was a normal investment for their future well-being. These merchants had actually lured the players into a trap. Shin Hyun-woo said that at the time, they didn't know that the food they were so kindly given contained drugs. When signing the contract, they never mentioned the most important thing. If they didn't pay for goods and services on time, they would have to pay with their own bodies. As it turned out, this was written in small print on the back of the contract. The kobolds cried out that these scoundrels had taken their bodies. At some point, the merchants disappeared and loan sharks appeared. Under the terms of the contract, they took the bodies and disappeared, leaving the kobolds' souls trapped inside them. However, this was only the beginning. The loan sharks came to them once a week to collect interest. This was also stated in the contract. Shin Hyun-woo said that their memories were being taken away. Kang So-jun asked if anyone else had come here. For example, from Panjo Station. Did the kobolds destroy it? Kang So-jun asked if the amount and conditions for the merchants had changed. Shin Hyun-woo shook his head. The protagonist asked when the loan sharks were supposed to come back. Suddenly, the goblins were startled. The loan sharks were already there. The kobolds and humans managed to hide at the last moment. Choi Hana asked Kai if he was okay. The young man nodded affirmatively. The girl was surprised why he looked so pale. Our hero replied that he was just angry. The goblins bought absolutely everything at the same price, and the interest rates were also the same. However, the degree of memory loss varied among them. Some had even forgotten the human language. Choi Hana asked what the reason for this was. Each of them had a different amount of knowledge in their heads. Shin Hyun-woo's memories spanned 23 years of his life. Some had fewer years and knew less. They were children. The detective was surprised. Was that why Shin Hyun-woo was trying to fight the loan sharks, even though he knew he was much weaker than them? Hana asked what would happen when they forgot what it meant to be human. The protagonist replied that at that moment, they would turn into monsters. Oh Dae-soo now understood everything. There was a human soul inside the kobold's body. That was why the system still identified them as players. Kang So-jun noticed a kobold who was also hiding from the loan sharks. He had a button in his hand to activate an explosive device. An explosion rang out, and everything around them was once again engulfed in smoke. However, the loan shark remained unharmed. He said that these kobolds never change. The archers took aim and opened fire to kill. The moneylender, emerging from the smoke, didn't even try to dodge the arrows. The villain simply waved away the arrows flying at him as if they were annoying gnats. After that, grenades flew at the moneylender. He was not afraid again and did not even dodge. There was a powerful explosion, and a strong flame appeared at its epicenter. The kobolds shouted that now they would definitely defeat the moneylenders. The moneylender, unharmed, emerged from the smoke and grabbed one of the goblins by the head. The villain dealt with the kobold and said that if they had taken anything, they would have to pay for it. Suddenly, Kang So-jun appeared from the smoke. He decided to lend his support and help the kobolds. The villain saw the man and became extremely angry. He said that the man would have to pay for this. Kang So-jun used a unique glove and delivered a devastating blow to the usurer's jaw. The villain lost his footing and flew far backward. At that moment, Choi Hana shot the usurer directly in the head. The bullet hit its target precisely. The girl asked the hero if he was hurt. The young man replied that he was fine. Despite the attack, the loan shark was invulnerable. Our hero assessed him. This loan shark was also a goblin. He looked very strong. He was a level 80 Wakabi. Wakabi turned to our hero and told him not to meddle in his business. Kang So-jun asked if the moneylender wasn't human. Kang So-jun approached Wakabi and grabbed him by the horn. The young man said that enough empty talk was enough. It was time to act. The protagonist activated a stone hammer with spikes and jumped over the moneylender to strike him. It was impossible to withstand such a blow, and Wacky was destroyed. Kang So-jun said that to become a goblin, one must kill one's own parents. These villains are very different from kobolds. Suddenly, another moneylender appeared, surrounded by flames. Kang So-jun activated the Dragon's Eye skill. The young man asked if the goblin hadn't been told as a child that playing with fire was dangerous. This goblin was level 85 and even bigger than the previous one. Kang So-jun shouted to the girl to deal with the others while he headed toward the giant. The protagonist approached the giant, who was surrounded by flames spreading in all directions. Kang So-jun jumped high and delivered a powerful blow with his gloved fist to his opponent's face. The system announced that the player had defeated the goblin moneylender. Level up. Our hero held a double contract with the kobolds in his hands. The young man said that it had been unfair from the start. Kang So-jun thought that they must have hidden the contents with some kind of special item. Choi Hana also wasted no time, and the destroyed moneylenders lay around her. The detective looked around and said with relief that it was all over. Kang Sojun noticed that it had become quite quiet. Oh Dae-soo noticed that ghostly bodies had appeared above the loan sharks. The detective was surprised. What was that? Kang Sojun suggested that they might be the souls of the players. The ghostly bodies were not only around the loan sharks, but also around the kobolds. The police officer did not understand what was happening. Choi Hana also did not know what to do. All the souls began to rise upward and merge into one. Kang Sojun quickly headed in the direction where the souls were flying. The young man said they had to hurry. These children were in danger. Our heroes descended the stairs to the floor below the station. The young people were surprised to see a train at the station. What's more, it was electrified. Kang Sojun was surprised. Was it still working? The protagonist said that the train used to be on the 10th line, but how did it end up here? Goron peeked out of his pocket. Kang Sojun said that Goron could smell a lot of food and needed to be fed until he was full. The train doors opened. A voice announced that passengers should take their seats, as the train was about to depart. Our hero said that this was another dungeon. In Dreamside, there are many different dungeons, which are the main content of the game. Among them are mobile dungeons in the form of carts or ships. Kang Sojun stood in front of the open train doors. As soon as he got here, the train wasn't there. Perhaps one of the mobile dungeons was right in front of him. The souls our heroes were following flew past and entered the train. Oh Dae-soo asked what to do now. Kang Sojun asked the detective what his plans were. Kang Sojun asked the detective if he understood that this train was actually a mobile underground facility. If they entered it, they could lose their chance to find any survivors at the Banjong station forever. The detective reminded them that Shin Hyun-woo had warned that there was no one else there. If any of them were still alive, they wouldn't have passed by Yeongdongpo station and escaped to the next one. Besides, there were no signs of a battle. In all the time they had been there, not even a Hydra had appeared. The detective suggested not chasing after a ghost, since they didn't know if anyone had survived. First, they needed to save the children whose souls were now before them. Kang Sojun agreed, and they all got on the train. The system reported that a fare dodger had been detected. The player was unable to obtain a boarding pass. A player named Gong Ji-won became the target of station employees. A young goblin appeared, ready to attack Gong Ji-won, a level 52 player. The young man tried to fight back, but the goblin was very agile. The goblin moved very quickly and annoyed Gong Ji-won. The young man could do nothing. The player took out his sword and began swinging it in front of him. However, there was still no positive effect. Gong Ji-won realized that the goblins weren't attacking on purpose. They were just playing with this man. The system reported that the quest had failed, and the player was unable to obtain a boarding pass. Gong Ji-won became a target for the station workers. A huge goblin resembling a loan shark appeared nearby. Gong Ji-won was captured and chained up. The player found himself in a dungeon with other prisoners. He didn't understand what was happening. In the rear of the train, small goblins were doing their part of the work. Players appeared before them. Our heroes assessed these opponents with experienced eyes. Why are these goblins so small? Kang Sojun knew that he couldn't fool himself. Even though they looked harmless, their level was definitely above 70. It seemed like this was the race that enjoyed killing humans for fun. Choi Hana suggested that this carriage was more like a freight car. Kang Sojun agreed, since this was a D-class dungeon. Dungeons didn't always match their appearance. For example, the E-class dungeon Destroyed School looked like a normal school on the outside, but inside it was clearly larger than it should have been. The view outside the window indicated that they were not underground, but above ground. Our hero concluded that this was clearly not a simple dungeon. As soon as they entered, alerts from the system began to come in constantly. The protagonist came to the correct conclusion. This was a themed dungeon. To clear the dungeon, players had to understand the rules that applied only in this particular dungeon. Kang Sojun began punching the nearest goblin, as he didn't know any other way to understand the rules. The system reported that the player had earned a landing ticket. Kang Sojun decided he was moving in the right direction. The system announced that player Choi Hana had also earned a landing ticket. Oh Dae-soo earned a landing ticket. Jang Gi-yeon defeated the goblin and also received a boarding pass. The young people logically assumed that they had completed the quest. Kang Sojun said that these tickets could be thrown away. The young man added that they didn't have time for a full raid. Apparently, the station employee was starting to catch fare dodgers, moving from the rear of the train. They had to lure him away. Choi Hana was surprised. Did Kai really want to use them as bait? Kang Sojun confirmed this. Our hero said that they don't know where the children's souls are. To find out and survive, they need to act unpredictably. Only then would they be able to catch the station employee. Jang Gi-yeon asked what to do with the goblins. The goblins began to hide in the corners in fear. Kang Sojun saw the expressions on the goblins' faces and told everyone to get ready immediately. The system reported that the quest had failed. Player Kang So-jun had become the target of the station employee. The station attendant appeared in the car and approached our hero. The attendant asked the man where his ticket was. Kang So-jun calmly replied that he had lost it. Kang So-jun didn't wait and struck first with a gloved fist, knocking the attendant to the ground. The goblin was outraged. How dare a man do such a thing? Kang So-jun struck again, and the goblin lost several teeth. Kang So-jun grabbed the injured man by the horn and asked if he was a station employee or a local inspector. The guard remained silent. Kang So-jun pressed a spiked cage against the goblin's throat. A themed dungeon is a dungeon with a specific theme depending on the situation. The goal was to track down a baby goblin in a ghost train within a certain time limit and earn a ticket. If the quest failed, the station employees would try to catch the players. Kay said that in the end, they only needed to defeat this goblin. Now they wouldn't have to worry about the ticket. Kang So-jun looked at the goblin and asked what had happened to his eyes and why he looked so sad. Our hero asked where the controller had hidden his soul. The goblin replied that he had forgotten everything. Kang So-jun threatened to kill him and told the goblin to answer immediately. The attendant said that he really didn't remember anything. Frightened by the glove, the goblin said that the souls were in Zone D. He couldn't remember anything else. The controller added that it seemed like all the merchants were gathering there. Kang So-jun demanded that the goblin give him all the keys. Kang So-jun said that the goblin could wander around Zone F as much as he wanted. Now it was no longer necessary to complete the quest to move on. Kang So-jun took the bag with all its contents from the goblin. The system reported that the player had stopped the goblin, a station worker. The worker had been robbed. The player obtained a hidden item, unknown scroll. The goblin was deactivated and lay on the floor. The hidden item turned out to be the master key to Zone F. Kang So-jun told his comrades that it was time to move out. There was very little time left. The detective wondered if the goblin was a player. Maybe he was also a victim. Kang So-jun said that this was not the same as with the kobold. A person does not become a goblin even if their soul is stolen. To do that, you either have to destroy your family or use tribal feeding. In other words, one must eat a human being. His companions were surprised to hear this. Kang So-jun suggested forgetting about pity when dealing with goblins. Our hero saw a door ahead and said they had reached the passageway. He had the right key for these doors. The passage was open. The system announced that the player had achieved an accomplishment and earned the title Speed Dungeon Conqueror. The detective asked if that was possible. He had heard that you couldn't pass a themed dungeon until the quest was completed. Kang So-jun admitted that that wasn't all. Players decide for themselves how to conquer a dungeon, either by conventional means or by unconventional means. Kang So-jun added, either glitches or cheats. Sometimes Easter eggs from the system itself help. The system reported that the players were in a safe zone, a resting place with trees. A place where people were eating appeared in front of the heroes. The protagonist made eye contact with the one who seemed to be the oldest among those present. Nearby were players chained up. They were hungry and sitting with their mouths open. Our hero logically assumed that these were the evil merchants. The one who seemed to be the eldest asked the heroes if they had tickets. It was the bandit merchant, the gambler Sun Dok Pal. Kang So-jun replied that they had no tickets. The villain was outraged. Sun Dok Pal indignantly asked how they dared to show up here. Kang So-jun asked, "Isn't it too hot today?" The merchant told the young man to follow him. The detective told Choi Hana to get ready. The girl replied that she was always ready. Sun Dok Pal suggested that the people were tired from their journey and offered them rest and food. The players were confused. The guests sat down at the table and enjoyed their meal. It all looked extremely strange. The merchant said that people could call him Mr. Sun because he was the boss here. The merchant sitting next to him said his name was Kang. Kang So-jun smiled and said he was pleased to meet them. The detective was puzzled. What was this guy up to? Kang So-jun whispered to the detective that there was one unusual item in the goblin's bundle. It was a piece of paper with a password for a resting place under the trees. Isn't it too hot today? Kang So-jun wondered how he could return the souls to the children. To do that, he needed to find information about the contract the children had signed with the merchants. However, goblins suddenly appeared. How did they get here? Sun Dok Pal laughed. He didn't know where the man had gotten the password, but it was last month's password. Kang So-jun put on gloves and said that these merchants had been very cautious. Mr. Sun ordered the goblins to deal with the people, and a commotion began. The detective took out his wave spear, and Hana used her revolver. Kang asked in surprise who they were, and added that they needed to go to Zone F6 immediately. Odae-su was standing at the exit with a spear in his hand. He asked where the merchants were rushing to, and noted that to save time, he would not read them their rights. The merchants shouted that one player couldn't handle them all. The detective showed what he was capable of and said there was no need to worry. One spear was enough. The merchants were deactivated. Kang So-jun approached the elder and said that he had originally wanted to resolve the matter peacefully, but something had gone wrong. Sun Dok-pal was surprised. How dare they challenge Jack? Kang So-jun was surprised to hear that name. The merchant laughed. Now this player finally understood what he had done. He had just raised a rebellion against Jack, the player who was ranked 9th. Our hero laughed loudly. Was Sun Dok-pal really saying that this swindler was here right now? Jack is ranked 9th among the dungeon merchants. He climbed to the top of the world without participating in combat. He is usually described in one of two ways. Jack is terrible. You should never borrow money from him. Jack is reliable. This man makes honest deals and keeps his word. Only he can find the best quality goods. But most importantly, he is willing to go to the ends of the earth for a customer to sell his goods, and then suddenly disappear as if he were never there. That is why he was nicknamed Mirage. Kang So-jun grabbed his opponent by the chest and asked again, "Is Jack really here? That scoundrel stole his things through commercial fraud." Sun Dok-pal didn't answer, but foam came out of his mouth. The merchant fell to the floor, and his soul separated from his body. The same thing happened to the bodies of the other merchants. Zhang Guiyan shouted that all the merchants were dead. Kang So-jun thought the same thing had happened to the kobolds. Choi Hana suggested that it might all be Jack's doing. Guiyan asked in surprise, "Is Jack really that bad?" Hana called Jack a pathetic scoundrel who deceives people with a smile on his face. She too had fallen victim to his scam, losing the money she had saved for new equipment. Kang So-jun was surprised. Did Jack really deceive the girl too? Hana stated that both of them had suffered at the hands of this swindler. Kang So-jun thought, could this con artist have outsmarted all the rankers? In any case, nothing could be said for certain, as there was no evidence against him. Hana said that she would give Jack a piece of her mind when she saw him. Kang So-jun suggested freeing the people first. The detective and Kay removed the shackles and freed the captives. One of the prisoners was not tied up. He was wearing a large earring, the angel earring, a unique item of level 300. This item had only one owner. That owner is Jack. The player said that these people were mistaken. He wasn't Jack at all. Kang So-jun asked the young man where he got the earring. The young man replied that he had bought it. Kay was surprised because it was the angel's earring. Choi Hana held out a revolver and said she was going to add 9 grams of lead to this guy's brain. The young man bowed his head and apologized, adding that he really was Jack. Jack confessed that he had tricked almost all the rankers, but at the time he just wanted to earn more rewards. Now he was very ashamed. This was the player Ji Sang-soo, nicknamed Jack. Kang So-jun said that it wasn't about what happened in Dreamside, but about what was happening here and now. Jack apologized to Mr. K, saying he didn't know the game would continue like this. Kang So-jun asked Jack how he knew that it was Mr. K in front of him. Jack told her everything as it was. Hana asked again, so he ended up here trying to catch some imposter, and then he ran into them by accident? Jack confirmed that he had been following K using GPS. Jack explained that the sensor could track one specific player. The player added that he had traded the sensor for those items. Only when he was with Mr. K could he earn a lot of money. K was his lucky charm. The detective thought, Jack is only 14 years old, he's still a schoolboy. Jack said he wanted to tell Ms. Choi Hana something. He is a big fan of the player Clark. The girl was surprised. Did he really know that she was Clark? Jack said that he had been attending her fan meetings all the time. Choi Hana remembered something. She would never have guessed that the charming boy was Jack. The young man added that he used to think Clark was an old man with a beer belly. Jack said that he had recently found out about an imposter who was pretending to be him and defaming his name. He noted that for 3 months, while the GPS couldn't find Kay, he wandered aimlessly around the city. Then several bandit merchants approached him. It was these merchants who told him about the existence of the second Jack. The terms of the agreement with them seemed suspicious, but the young man agreed anyway. The merchants said that with the help of the angel's earring, the contract could be terminated. Jack said that he then realized that he could make a lot of money with them and followed them to find the fake Jack. Sun Dok-pal came here to join the auction house run by the imposter. Kang So-jun asked what kind of house it was. Jack replied that it was something like a storage facility, a black market in the newly opened D5 district. There would be various rare items from this house there. Kang So-jun guessed that this was where they were going to sell these people. Jack confirmed this. The young man asked if there had been any news about when these villains had been defeated. They were red players. After they died, they should have dropped items and given experience, like monsters. However, they were still alive and had simply left their bodies behind. Their souls had been transferred to another place. In other words, these people are like vessels for souls, like extra lives. The organizer of all this is the one whom the people have nicknamed the Goblin Master, but there is also the fake Jack. Goblins have a hierarchy. Each of them obeys the orders of those above them. The only and strongest goblin rules over all the others. The name of this goblin is Lycan. But the goblin owner was able to subjugate even the king of these creatures. Kang Sojun thought that they were the ones who started all this mess, so they had to find the goblin owner. The detective said they needed to hurry. Hana noticed that they should be in Zone E now. Jack said he knew a shortcut and would explain everything on the way. The young people found themselves on the roof of a moving train. Kang Sojun was surprised. Was this really the shortcut? What was Jack's idea? Jack said he knew which car was going to the black market. Once there, he would be able to find out more. Kang Sojun studied the information in the information window and said that was good. The system reported that the player was in the hidden area train roof. The system notified that the hidden quest, Night of the Four Gods, had begun. A portal suddenly appeared ahead. Jack said that he seemed to have made a mistake about the safe route. One of the monsters, a level 72 Spectre, reported that they were approaching. Kang Sojun speculated that these monsters on the train roof would be very agile, so he put on his Kakashi spiked gloves. Jack said that specters were ghosts, so physical damage didn't work on them. In that case, Kang Sojun activated the Calm skill. The system informed the player that they could perform attacks that concentrated all their mana at the point of impact. Our hero used his gloves and defeated the specters. He said that now all that was left was to get rid of the rest. Kay looked back and asked where Jack had gone. Jack said he was behind them. Kang Sojun jumped in surprise. Jack reappeared and reminded them that he could make himself invisible. That was why he was nicknamed Mirage. Now they needed to figure out how to deal with these ghosts. Jack said that there was another problem. If they got rid of all the ghosts, their mother would appear. This ghost was called Banshee D. The protagonist said that the shortcut was indeed here. The young man added that they had a new plan. Choi Hana opened fire with her revolver. The girl added that she didn't like it. Kang Sojun shouted that they had to run away, that fighting these monsters was useless. Jang Gi-yeon and Odesu were surprised. Why stop fighting? What's going on? Kang Sojun explained that if they destroyed all the specters, the boss Banshee D would appear. They were not in a position to fight her as well. The young man added that she could help them, and they should take advantage of that. After a while, Chang-gyun ran away from the monsters and asked for help. The detective said that there were more and more of them, and they needed to retreat. Kang Sojun asked Chang-gyun if he could lure the specters away with the detective. Chang-gyun replied that he could trust Kay. A young man with a glass of wine in his hand suggested watching the player B25. He has incredible speed. How did he manage to outrun everyone? After a while, it became clear that player B25 had defeated everyone. A monster approached the fake Jack. The young man said that the fight was over. Why did he come here? The monster told the fake Jack to check the report. The young man said that now his mood was ruined. Even the expensive wine had lost its taste. The goblin's hat, which was on fake Jack, allowed him to control certain objects. The fake Jack asked what the goblin wanted to show him. The goblin replied that one of the station employees had been attacked. The goblin suggested that the boss look at the screen. The screen showed a scene where Kang Sojun had deactivated a station employee and broken his horn. The fake Jack became angry. Was this some kind of joke? Were there really players here who could take down a station employee? Fake Jack asked who they were. The young man recognized the girl. Was that really Choi Hana? Fake Jack said that in that case, a lot changes. They must be caught. The main thing was to bring the girl back. The rest could be eliminated. Our heroes entered car D6. The situation was calm. Hana asked Kay if he really thought the detective and Gaeyeon could handle it. Kang Sojun said that Chang Gaeyeon had the strongest armor. He was a detective from the Serious Crimes Division, so he was well trained. Jack said they were there. Behind this passageway is the black market. Here, you can make all your dirty desires come true. Everyone wears masks to hide their identities. The young people only had one mask between the three of them. Hana asked what they were going to do. You can't go there alone. Jack said he had an idea. The young man said that Kay could take his cloak. It was the Hermit's cloak, which had the ability to make the wearer invisible. Jack noted that with this cloak, they could easily get into the market and find information about the contract. Kang Sojun said that wouldn't be enough. Jack added that there was another way. Zone D5 was a black market casino. The protagonist entered the casino unnoticed thanks to the cloak. Those present felt a blast of icy wind. Kang Sojun thought he had entered through a portal, not a door. The scale of this underground lair was staggering. He had to decide where to start. Kang Sojun noticed a goblin acting suspiciously. Gion and Odesu tried to run away from the monsters chasing them. The detective said that Jang Gyeon was a pretty good runner. The young man noted that he couldn't fail the mission entrusted to him by Mr. K. Meanwhile, in Zone D5, on the black market, two masked figures appeared. They were Kang So-jun and Choi Hana. The goblin asked the young men if they were merchants. The goblin inquired about the goods they intended to sell. The girl took off her hood, and the goblin recognized her. It was Choi Hana, the very person Mr. Jack had asked to be brought to him. The goblin suggested that the young people go to a quieter place. Kang So-jun called the goblin cute. Another masked man followed the newcomers as they left with the goblin. Kang So-jun used his invisibility cloak to enter the dungeon. In the dungeon behind bars was a monster screaming loudly. Kang So-jun took off his hood and became visible. In front of him, behind the bars, was a monster. Our hero had never seen orcs being traded before. Kang So-jun managed to put a hood over his head and become invisible. At that moment, goblins appeared in the dungeon, leading a new prisoner. The goblin said that another contract victim had been delivered. Kang So-jun guessed that their lair was here. The new captive turned out to be Gonji-won. Kang So-jun thought that this was definitely the young man they had met while hunting skeletons. Fortunately, the young man was still conscious, but he looked very bad. Kang So-jun realized that there was very little time left to save everyone, including Ji-won. He needed to tell the detective, but later. There were other things to do. Kang So-jun continued on his way. Kang So-jun decided to find the goblin responsible for all the local affairs. Our hero found such a goblin. Kang So-jun approached the goblin from behind and prepared to attack. The villain heard a strange sound. The kick landed on the upper part of his face. The blow was unexpected, and the goblin was deactivated. Choi Hana couldn't understand where the goblin was leading them. Jack suggested that they were going to an auction house. The goblin stopped in front of the doors and said they had arrived. Jack thanked him for the escort. Inside the room was a fake Jack. Behind him stood a huge goblin. The goblin was of incredible size and had a terrifying appearance. Choi Hana thought, could this be a third-rank goblin? The fake Jack laughed and said he could see the real idol. Could it be Choi Hana? Jack thought. Could this be the scoundrel pretending to be him? What kind of hat is that guy wearing? Could it be a goblin's hat? The young people now understood why the goblins were so easily subdued. Again, this hat isn't actually used the way it seems. The fake Jack told the goblin that he should have brought only the girl. Why is this guy here? Fake Jack asked, is it really that difficult for Leekin? Jack told the gentleman, the chief merchant of the dungeon, to stop. He suggested they talk. The boss stopped Lycan. He said that this player apparently knows who he's dealing with. The masked young man said that every merchant knew this man. Fake Jack took out a bottle of wine and offered to drink with him. The young man said he couldn't refuse the gentleman, the chief merchant of the dungeon. Fake Jack filled the young man's glass and told him not to worry. There was no poison in it. The boss asked why the masked man was looking for him. Jack replied that he wanted to talk about an exclusive trade agreement. His client wanted to receive high-quality goods without having to deal with the auction house. The villain replied that it would take a lot of money. Jack showed him a number with 7 zeros and asked if that would be enough. Choi Hana was surprised. How did this guy manage to get so much money? But it's no surprise, he is Jack, 9th among all the underground dealers. The fake Jack said that wouldn't be enough. He wanted a more reliable client. The masked young man said he couldn't reveal the client's identity. It was enough to know that he was an extremely well-known person in the Ark. Fake Jack suggested that it must be him. The fake Jack told Leekin to bring him the prepared papers. The villain told the masked youth that he just knew they would try to contact him. That's why he had prepared in advance. Jack said he was ready to sign the contract. The interlocutors signed the contract. After signing, a chain appeared on Jack's wrist. What was it? The villain told his companion not to be offended. He needed at least some guarantee that he would not be deceived. The double contract was activated. The player's body becomes the property of another person, and the player's inventory becomes the property of another person. Jack couldn't believe it had happened. The system reported that a player named Jack now had the right to dispose of the body and belongings of the person who signed the contract. The villain expressed confidence that his opponent would be satisfied. The masked man said that his interlocutor was greatly mistaken. Did he really think he was the only one who had taken care of everything in advance? The fake Jack began to suspect something was wrong. What was going on here? An evil spirit appeared above the villain. Jack said that this was their guarantee. The fake Jack called on Leekin for help. He asked in surprise, did his companion really hope to defeat Leekin with the help of pathetic ghosts? The fake Jack ordered Lycan to destroy the masked man and his ghosts. Jack gave the goblin the order to attack his opponent. Detective and Chang Gi-yeon came to the rescue. They repelled Leekin's attack. Choi Hana said they had arrived just in time. The villain said that these players had attacked the wrong person. The system reported that the double contract had been activated. Unexpectedly, the contract in the fake Jack's hands burned up. He asked in surprise how his opponent had managed to terminate the contract. The young man said he didn't know. The contract simply vanished into thin air. Jack and the fake Jack began to settle their differences. However, the young man in the mask remained calm the whole time. His opponent, on the other hand, was anything but. Jack declared that he was actually dealing with a fake. He said that the person in his place should be worrying about something else entirely. The system reported that all the Spectra had been destroyed. A harbinger of doom appeared next to the young people. It was the mother of the Spectra. This monster was called Banshee, the mother of Reapers, a Class D boss. The monster was deactivated and lying on its back. One horn was broken. Kang So-jun told the goblin to get up. It was time to answer his questions. Did the goblin really want to be left without enemies? Kang So-jun asked where the double contracts were kept. The goblin replied that the contracts were with the boss, the master of the goblins, Mr. Jack. Kang So-jun asked why the goblins obeyed him. The goblin replied that it was because this man wore the goblin hat. The protagonist suggested that he had received the hat as a reward during the first Dreamside. Kang So-jun said he had one last question. Where was Jack now? The goblin replied that Jack was in Zone D10. The goblin declared that he was actually a human. Several scoundrels had tricked him into becoming a goblin. Because of that hat, he had no choice but to obey his master's orders. The system reported that the player had defeated the second-class goblin guard. Kang So-jun, without removing his invisibility cloak, said they needed to hurry and increased his speed. Zhang Guiyan was surprised. Why could he hear different voices? The detective suggested that they were the cries of the dead. Yuangshi was a ghost who had come from hell. His special skill was howling. A banshee is not just a ghost, but the embodiment of all specters. Such a ghost would be useful to them as an ally. Fake Jack said that he was capable of subjugating even such ghosts. However, they made a huge mistake when they decided to come here and attack him. The boss ordered Lycan to attack. Lycan activated a huge shockwave. The detective activated the barrier, which lasted 3 seconds. The goblins outside the barrier were destroyed. They couldn't withstand the shockwave. The detective said they couldn't get involved in this fight, unless he helped. The banshee noted that the king without his queen was pitiful. The goblins said they heard a loud scream. Is the king okay? Lycan continued to fight Banshee. However, he was not getting very far. As expected, Banshee was very fast and able to block many of his attacks. At this rate, she would easily defeat him. Fake Jack was extremely dissatisfied. Was this all Lycan was capable of? Lycan must protect his master at all costs. Lycan said he was doing everything he could and tried to attack Banshee again. After this attack, Banshee was entangled in chains. Lycan urged Banshee to swear allegiance to him. The hidden boss Banshee was defeated. Fake Jack said that Lycan did well, and that he could now finish off the other players, except for the girl. Choi Hana pulled out a revolver, aimed, and fired. The bullet hit Lycan. However, it didn't have the desired effect. The girl thought that the monster was regenerating quickly. Too quickly. Her level was clearly not high enough. Suddenly, Kang So-jun appeared in front of Lycan. The young man was ready to attack the huge goblin. Our hero hoped that Banshee would at least be able to put pressure on the goblin. The protagonist assessed the situation and tried to identify Lycan's weak spot. Kang So-jun handed Ji Sang-so his cloak and thanked him. Lycan struck, and our hero was sent flying backward but managed to stay on his feet. Kang So-jun counterattacked the giant and delivered a crushing blow. Choi Hana said that this Lycan was a good fighter even with one hand. That's what a third-rank goblin is. The detective said that they could leave him to Kang So-jun and take care of the double contracts for now. Ji Sang-so said not to worry, he would take care of them. Jack rummaged through his inventory and pulled out the sheets. They were the very contracts. Ji Sang-so began to carefully study the available information. The fake Jack was surprised. How did his items end up with this masked man? Ji Sang-so said that his opponent didn't even expect to be deceived. Now he would explain how it happened. Anyone who dares to lie to an angel's earring will have their own lies reflected back at them. Information emerged that player Ji Sang-so had the right to dispose of his opponent's belongings. Player Ji Sang-so had the right to dispose of his opponent's body. Ji Sang-so took off his mask and said that now all the fake Jack's belongings, even his body, belong to him. It's all stated in the contract. Ji Sang-so added that this guy is now effectively his slave. Ji Sang-so asked if his opponent had lost anything. Jack was holding the goblin's hat. Jack said that he knew everything. With this hat, one could control goblins. Jack said he was curious to see what this scoundrel would bring him this time. The fake Jack rushed at the goblins and said he needed help. Chan Gyeon said that the goblins were already close, and that they needed to use the hat quickly and become their king. Ji Sang-so said that this was impossible. The existing goblins only obey their original master. They are bound to him by their souls, so it's not that simple. Zhang Yiyan asked what to do now. Should they just wait for the goblins to attack them? Kang Sojun said that they had one option. They must defeat Lee Kun. The protagonist kicked the giant again. Our hero knew that he was facing the strongest D-class monster. It was difficult to fight him. There's a chance to win if you try to knock him down. Jack shouted that he had a hat. Kang Sojun rushed toward Jack. In that case, he would become the king of all goblins, and no one would be able to control him. The player obtained the item Banshee's Scythe. The fake Jack was surprised. Does this guy really think he can defeat Lycan with some kind of stick? Lycan turned around and approached our hero again. The huge goblin said that this time he would deal with this pathetic human. The protagonist activated the Dragon's Eye skill and said that now he could see everything. Kang Sojun realized that he wouldn't be able to fight such a powerful opponent for long. With a Class D boss like this, you have to hit a specific spot. Choi Hana would be perfect for that. Hana aimed her revolver and fired. Lee Kun dodged, and the bullet flew past him. The goblin said it was useless. The fake Jack laughed again. Did they really think they could defeat Lee Kun with such a toy? However, in the next moment, fake Jack's body stopped obeying him. His new master was controlling fake Jack's body. The villain told the guy to stop what he was doing immediately. No one had ever done that to him before. Kang Sojun looked at Lee Kun and said that the goblin had been caught. Lee Kun approached the fake Jack. The villain was frightened and told Lee Kun to destroy those people immediately. Lee Kun didn't move and stared intently at his former master. Kang Sojun told the fake Jack that their agreement was now null and void. Kang Sojun added that after activating the Dragon's Eye skill, he had broken the chains that bound them. Lee Kun grabbed the fake Jack by the head. The young man couldn't believe that this was happening. Lycan was bound by the chains of the new contract and said that, as a goblin, he had sworn allegiance to the king. He must obey any orders without question. However, Lycan couldn't understand why this natural bond caused him pain. Why was it so unpleasant for him? Lycan said that this man was no longer his king, and he would not obey him. The goblins present fell to the ground and bowed their heads before Lycan. Jack said that the chief goblin was finally free. His growl alone was enough to make the others kneel. The fake Jack shouted at Lycan to shut up immediately and obey him. Lycan said that this man was not worthy of being king. The fake Jack was deactivated, and his lifeless body fell to the ground. Lycan, turning to our hero, said that it was his turn. Kang Sojun told Lycan to stop. Why did they need to fight? Wasn't it better not to waste their strength? The protagonist put on the goblin hat. The system announced that the player had been given the title King of the Goblins. The player can now control the souls of goblins. Lycan was immediately bound in chains. He shouted that a human had no right to do such a thing. Kang Sojun said he wasn't angry with Lycan at all, but he couldn't do anything else. Chang Giyong shouted, "What's going on?" He looked as if he had been struck by an arrow. Does the hat not work? Kang Sojun was surprised. Has the hat stopped working? Is Lycan completely disobedient? What should we do now? The protagonist activated the Dragon's Eye skill again. Kang Sojun suggested that there was something foreign inside the goblin's body. Lycan coughed and leaned over the goblin's body. Jack said that the monster was just laughing at them. Kay noticed that even his arm had been restored. Lycan struck the ground with his restored hand, activating a shockwave. The young people were blown away. Kang Sojun suggested that this wasn't the end of it. Jack said that Lycan possessed incredible strength. Lycan held the body of the fake Jack in his hand. Ji Song-su suggested that Lycan had chosen that guy as his victim from the start. Lycan opened his mouth and prepared to swallow the fake Jack. Kang Sojun shouted for the goblin to stop. What was he doing? The fake Jack raised his head, and with his last ounce of strength, said that no one would get out of there. Lycan swallowed the fake Jack without saying a word. Ji Sang-su was shocked and asked Kay what was going on. The system reported an error. The system is checking the error status. Kang Sojun looked at Lycan and suggested that the real Goblin King had appeared. The system reported that a Class C boss had appeared. The luggage compartment contained everything that was currently in stock. That amount should be enough for a week. The masked player said that these items needed to be added to his inventory. The player said that there were no goblins anywhere to be seen. It had been too easy. The assistant said that they had to hurry anyway. They were representatives of the National Intelligence Service, Kim Kap-soo and Yu Yeon-suk. Yeon-suk noted that the Ark was currently in crisis. Kim Kap-soo said that in that case, they needed to pack everything up quickly and leave. Yeon-suk asked the chief to come over. The National Intelligence Service representatives discovered survivors chained up. The intelligence officers realized that human trafficking was taking place there. The chief said that it was time to return, and that these people could be left there. Kim Kap-soo added that they couldn't waste time transporting the wounded to the Ark. The main thing was to take the food with them. A monster with glowing eyes appeared above the scouts. The goblin showed aggression toward the masked men. Jang Gi-yeon said that the monster wasn't even paying attention to them. Kang So-jun said that the goblin had somehow managed to evolve. Now it had become a C-class monster. The detective was surprised. Is that even possible? How can you evolve into a boss without leaving the dungeon? Kang So-jun replied that it was theoretically possible. Although in the first dream side, no one had ever achieved this. Common sense clearly does not work here. The system rejected it as an error. Either way, the goblin was now a trigger they had already encountered. Although he had managed to evolve, he had completely lost his mind and was only moving to achieve his desires. He had only one desire, to become stronger. Choi Hana wondered what they should do now. The protagonist replied that the monster had not yet fully evolved, but it was definitely not a normal C-class goblin like the ones he had encountered before. It was not a carrier of the virus that caused disease and increased the number of triggers and hydras. In the first dream side, research was conducted on the evolution of various mobs through interaction with spores, but it ended in failure. In the second dream side, other changes may have been applied to him that were not originally in the first version of the game. Kang So-jun activated the Dragon's Eye skill. The goblin had a strange glow around its neck. This was what alarmed our hero the most. Guyon suggested that it was useless to try to attack while the goblin was in that form. The protagonist put on the Kakashi spiked gloves. Kang So-jun said that there was something that would help them. The young man cut his fingers and dripped blood onto the hat. The system activated the goblin hat's exclusive ability, Imanrian. Souls began to fly around our hero. Jack said that this was indeed the real Imanrian. Kang So-jun said that if they needed to catch the monster, there was nothing left to do but become a monster themselves. The system informed us that the player could now control souls. The amount of power available depended on the number of souls used. It was like using souls as a shield. Some of them were probably those children. The protagonist used the Blade of Regret of Vondis. As expected, the blade can be used in conjunction with the Imanrian skill. Moreover, the sword used to belong to the undead. The Blade of Regret of Vondis resonates strongly. The detective asked if Kang So-jun was okay. The young man told Oh Dae-soo to step back just in case his soul was also drawn in. Kang So-jun thought that the level of Imanrian would differ depending on how many souls he controlled. However, he had gathered them all against his will. The ability had manifested itself because of the goblin's hat. The protagonist decided to put an end to this once and for all. Our hero decided to find the weak spots on the monster's body as quickly as possible. The special service agent saw an aggressive man. Is this really a human being? The protagonist also had a sword in his hand. Kang So-jun said that if the two masked men didn't want to die, they should leave immediately. Yeon-sok shouted that there was danger behind them. Sure enough, the open mouth of a goblin appeared above our hero. Kang So-jun reacted instantly and crouched down. Was this goblin really going to swallow him? Kang So-jun said that he had managed to capture many souls, and the goblin was probably drooling. Our hero noticed that his opponent had gone mad. The Dragon's Eye was activated. Kang So-jun could now see right through the goblin. Of course, he couldn't help but notice the glowing spot on the back of the monster's head. Kang So-jun decided to get close enough, believing that the spot on the neck was the key. Kang So-jun sprinted forward and began to climb up the huge goblin's body. The Calm skill was activated. Our hero saw a dungeon flower on the monster's neck. Could it really be that? The young man would never have thought that someone would plant dungeon flowers on a monster. However, these were not the harmless flowers our hero had seen before. There must be a virus involved that accelerates the evolution of the creature. The flower was at the center of Leekon's life force. Kang So-jun swung his sword and activated its exclusive ability, Spiky Frost. The protagonist said that it was no longer possible to use Imanrian, so it was time to end this. Our hero wanted to get rid of the flower, but thought he was too weak right now. Unexpectedly, help came to the young man. Choi Hana shouted for him to step aside. The girl fired a shot and said she wanted to burn his blood. The bullet pierced the flower. Leekon grabbed his neck at the same moment. The protagonist thought that the goblin had finally been caught. Imanrian was deactivated. The danger detection skill was activated. Many souls were detected around them. Choi said that the souls were leaving. They had gotten out of control only because our hero had struck Leekon's central point. However, the young man tried to do the opposite, to make the souls lose their power. Although he did not expect this effect, too many souls could accumulate. As is well known, the undead instinctively attack the living, so now they would most likely try to find a vessel, a body they could inhabit. This would lead to a bloody massacre. Our hero understood that there was little time left. He had to fix the situation with the undead immediately. However, due to the recent battle, the young man had lost almost all his strength. Besides, he was not a goblin. Kang So-jun approached a third-class goblin and took off its hat. Goblins are a race capable of controlling souls. In addition, this hat is designed to allow goblins to evolve into Imamanrians. However, this was too risky. After all, if he fully evolved, he would be unstoppable. Kang So-jun put the hat on Lee Kun and said that he would be king for a while. The young man asked the goblin to put those souls to sleep. A suspicious sound was heard. But they're goblins. Aren't they half NPCs? Why are they hunting their own kind? How could they eat so many souls just to become stronger? At that moment, their eyes were fixed on the goblins' hats. In the past, these monsters sent wandering souls back to the afterlife. However, each of them wanted to become stronger by eating their own kind. Eventually, someone created the goblin hat to control all this madness. The souls begged for help and reproached Lee Kun for eating his fellow goblins to become stronger. He was not their king. Lee Kun shouted that he didn't want to be king and asked to be left alone. Kang So-jun asked Lee Kun to calm the souls. Lee Kun couldn't understand whose voice it was. Could it be the goblin hat? Lee Kun said that the man had remembered why he needed it to stop him and used Imamanrian. Lee Kun declared that this man was the true master of the hat. They would have to obey his orders. The huge goblin called our hero his king. The National Intelligence Service agents were still in the train car. They couldn't believe they had just encountered a monster. This monster resembled the boss, the Lizard King, from the S-Class dungeon. Yoon-suk asked his boss what they should do. His colleagues did not respond. Kim Kapsu said they needed to return to the Ark. He was very sorry about his colleagues. Yen-sok asked if they shouldn't at least check if they were alive. The boss said that this place was a living hell. The boss added that they had to get out of there quickly or they might not survive. Suddenly, the roof of the car burst open and a man fell inside. Kang So-jun lay unconscious on the floor. Kim Kapsu told Yeon-suk to check if it was one of them. Lee Kun shouted at the two to get out immediately. The scouts were frightened. Could it be a monster? Lee Kun became like a small child and continued to scream, telling the pitiful people not to come near him. The scouts were surprised. Where did this kid come from? He looked like a goblin. Lee Kun couldn't hold on and fell onto his back. He was holding a heavy weapon in his hands. The fake Jack from the company was unharmed. He said he had the strength of a monster. Jack couldn't believe that a third-rate goblin seemed so helpless. Maybe he hadn't had enough showers? The fake Jack promised to finish off Lee Kun. Then he would see the true power of the company. The fake Jack drew his sword and shouted for everyone present to leave immediately. Suddenly, Jack collapsed to the floor. He didn't understand what was happening, but his body refused to obey him. Standing before the fake Jack was a man who said he was glad to see slave number 1. The real Jack said he wouldn't let this scoundrel die so easily until he paid back his debt. The fake Jack was outraged. Who was this guy? And how dare he touch him, an employee of the company? Jack declared that he was a merchant who would be much more ruthless than his opponent. Kang So-jun was surrounded by a huge number of frenzied souls. The young man thought that if this continued, these souls would devour him sooner or later. Little Lee Kun asked our hero if His Majesty was all right. The player had been given the title King of the Goblins, and now all the goblins bowed their heads before him. Kang So-jun, sitting on the bed, wondered if he had really been lying there unconscious for 2 whole days. Choi Hana said, "Finally, Kay has woken up." On the protagonist's bed were little Lee Kun and Goron. Kang So-jun said that they were national intelligence agents straight from the Ark. Was the government still alive? Hana agreed. Ji Sang-soo had just left for negotiations. Things weren't looking good at the Ark. They were facing a severe food shortage. Most likely, it was the fault of the Yaros, who had cut off all land routes. If they haven't been able to completely clear out the dungeon in all this time, then it must be the largest in the city. Kang So-jun noted that if they hadn't organized an entire corps, then the lizards were most likely S-class or higher. Kang So-jun asked about the survivors. Hana replied that they had managed to find Gonji-won among them, but he was in serious condition. The detective took him to the Ark, where the doctors were still there. Hana added that the rest had stayed behind. They had no other choice. Lee Kun said he was waiting for new orders from the king. Kang So-jun asked what had happened to the children's souls. Had they disappeared? Lee Kun replied that the souls were fine. He had kept them. Kang So-jun was delighted. Could the child really bring them back? Lee Kun explained that all the souls inside the hat were mixed together, so it was impossible to select or remove one. Besides, the goblin hat did not belong to him. Until His Majesty's life came to an end, it would belong only to the king. Kang So-jun thought it was all very strange, starting with the fact that, despite being a monster, Lee Kun's name still glowed white. Kang So-jun speculated that Lee Kun had lost almost all of his power while trying to put the souls to sleep. So there was no point in giving him the hat. Was there really no other way out? The goblin said that this required great royal majesty. Ji Sang-so entered the room and said that he had returned directly from the Ark. Kang So-jun asked how the detective was doing. Jack replied that Oh Dai-soo was still there and that Gong Ji-won was in critical condition. Kang So-jun asked how the fake Jack was feeling. Our hero suggested that Ji San-so and the fake Jack were connected to the angel earring. San-so confirmed that he had made an extremely unfavorable deal with the fake Jack. Kang So-jun thought that Jack's deal was so clean for a reason. Because of the earring, neither he nor the contractor could cheat. The protagonist declared that something was wrong here. How could Ji Sun-so have deceived him if he had had the earring for 3 years? Jack replied that it had happened before the awards ceremony, so he had simply served his punishment, and that was all. Kang So-jun asked Jack if he had found out anything about the guy. Sun-so replied that the fake Jack had lost his memory. They must have used some kind of drug. Kang So-jun asked Ji San-so what he knew about royal majesty. Jack replied that Kang So-jun needed goblin horns. They were used to control souls. Kang So-jun said he knew where to find items made from them. Ji Sang-soo reported that they had received an official request for cooperation from the National Intelligence Service. Not far from there was the location known as Bermuda. The team of players from the Ark who had gone there on an expedition had disappeared. The team leader, Captain Kim Kang-ryul, was in an accident. The most important thing is his last message. Jack noted that the Bermuda area is connected to goblins. Intelligence asked them to search the place. The protagonist wondered if it was really a goblin ball, and if it could help bring back the children's souls. Leekin said that if it was made of horns, it would allow the king's greatness to shine even brighter. Kang So-jun thought that with this, he could become even stronger than he already was. Our hero asked where this Bermuda was. Jack replied that it was in Chamshil at the fair. The fair he was looking for. Captain Kim Kang-ryul tried to escape from the monster chasing him. The captain couldn't understand how this was possible. How could lizards be here? They only live in the Ark. The captain didn't remember there being a breach in the dungeon. Kim Kang-ryul noticed that there were also monster bosses here. Orcs and other evil creatures. There were too many of them. The assistant asked the captain if he was okay. The captain asked what this thing was called. The assistant repeated that it was a goblin ball. He had seen it before in the first Dreamside. Kim Kang-ryul thought that he himself was somehow involved in all this. It couldn't be that monsters carried equipment that didn't match their characteristics. The assistant said that the captain's life was in danger and they needed to think about how to get back. Kim Kang-ryul replied that there was no need to worry. They would definitely find a way out. However, it was a trap. They had to make sure no one could get in. The train doors opened, and Kang So-jun appeared at the threshold, accompanied by his comrades. Ji Sang-so said he would wait for them in the car. Kang So-jun asked Jack to take care of the others instead. Kang So-jun reminded him that the boss of this dungeon was still a third-class goblin. And if Lee Kan belonged to him, then the right to move the dungeon also remained with him. Choi Hana said that there were no traces of monsters or humans. This was unsettling. The girl added that, on the other hand, she was glad to finally visit the fair. Chung Kyung was surprised. Had Choi Hana never been there before? The girl replied that she had debuted at a young age, so she could only dream of walking peacefully in such crowded places. The protagonist had already forgotten that Hana was the most famous idol in the whole country, known by absolutely everyone. The young people arrived at the venue. Hana told Kang So-jun not to lag behind. Kang So-jun thought something was wrong. It was too clean. Could it be that no one else had been here? Choi Hana was delighted by what she saw, while Nas looked around with interest. Our hero had the feeling that he had returned to his normal life. Kang So-jun heard a strange sound and activated his dragon eye. The young man sensed a suspicious energy wave. The nearby carousel suddenly started moving. Kang So-jun shouted for everyone to get ready. Hana pulled out her revolver, and Gion thrust his sword forward. The protagonist thought they were attacking, and that there were many of them. The Blade of Regret of Wandus was used. However, to everyone's surprise, people appeared at the fair, including children. Kang So-jun couldn't believe his eyes. People said that it was a real fairy tale world full of hope and romance. Choi Hana asked Kang So-jun what was going on. The young man just shrugged in response. Someone noticed the girl and recognized her as Choi Hana. She looked even cooler in real life. People assumed that the idol was filming here. Otherwise, who would come to a fair in armor? Choi Hana was even asked for an autograph. Kang So-jun continued to watch everything with tension and distrust. The system reported that a smoke grenade had been used. After that, Kang So-jun said they should leave. When the smoke cleared, people realized they had lost sight of Choi Hana. Kang So-jun noticed that they had attracted too much attention. Hana suggested that it was because of their costumes, and that it would be a good idea to change them. The young people went into a store selling school uniforms on sale and changed their outfits. Choi Hana noticed that she hadn't worn a school uniform in a long time. Jang Gi-yeon said he wouldn't change. He liked the attention. Hana put on a Panama hat and said that everyone knew her face. Now they could look around the place without being noticed. Lycan asked his king what the tall tower was. Are people really that tall? Kang Sojun also didn't expect the fair to be so big. Choi Hana said it was as if nothing had happened. The girl added that people were happy and pleasant music was playing. It seemed like everything that had happened was just a dream, and now they were back to reality. The girl looked at the ticket she had just been handed and noticed something strange. It had been issued last year. Hana was surprised. Had they really gone back in time? Kang Sojun replied that they hadn't gone back. Hana could check her phone. It was just that the place itself indicated a specific moment in the past. Kang Sojun added that it was all just an illusion. Choi Hana regretted that none of this was real. Hana raised her phone, called the young man over, and took a selfie. The girl said that even though it was an illusion, it turned out very beautiful. Choi Hana added that they should at least have one photo together. Kang Sojun thought that the girl didn't look like herself right now. She didn't look like an idol performing on stage, nor did she resemble Clark's arrow. Passers-by recognized Choi Hana again and decided that her boyfriend was next to her. Kang Sojun said that they had been spotted again. Choi Hana laughed and said that they needed to hide quickly. Kang Sojun called Jang Gi-yeon and said they had to get out of there immediately. Choi Hana wondered what they should do now. Kang Sojun wanted to figure out why everything was happening this way. The young people found themselves on the train again. Our hero declared that this place was not a dungeon. Hana asked where they were then. After all, this place was perfect for a themed dungeon. The protagonist admitted that he had thought so at first. However, when they entered, no one received a notification that they had entered a dungeon. The girl asked what it was then. Kang Sojun, unfortunately, couldn't explain what was happening either. On top of that, Goron was drooling over the fantastic smell that filled the air. He was rejoicing over the delicious food nearby. The young man thought, when Goron behaves like this, it means there is a dungeon nearby. But the system showed that the smell was spreading everywhere. Gi-yeon said they would have to search everything again. Hana pointed out that they hadn't found anything last time. Kang Sojun said that now they would do things differently. The young man suggested putting on a concert. Our hero added that while they were examining the place, he noticed several strange energy flows. But as soon as he got closer, the flows disappeared. Now they would try to attract them to themselves. Hana asked in surprise if that could really work. Kang Sojun replied that he didn't see any other options. Gi-yeon informed our hero that they had finished setting up the stage. Choi Hana said that if they were going to put on a concert, everything had to be top-notch. The girl added that even if it was an illusion, people here believed it was real. People heard loud noises and realized that a concert was about to begin. They even recognized a familiar song performed by Choi Hana. The girl on stage began to sing, "Move your body, this place is a festival." The audience joined in and began to sing along with their idol. Kang Sojun noted that everyone started singing in unison. It was immediately clear that Hana was performing. Gi-yeon also sang, "Move your body." The protagonist thought it was time for him to get moving too. He activated Dragon's Eye. Kang Sojun said that Choi Hana shouldn't be the only one trying. Thanks to the activated skill, our hero was able to spot them. They turned out to be the very same toys. When our heroes first entered here, they noticed a carousel. The toys always appeared exactly where people gathered when they saw Choi Hana. Kang Sojun thought that maybe they didn't like it. Our hero announced that the enemies were close and everyone needed to get ready. The toys were armed and believed that the guests were obliged to ride the attractions. One of the toys swung an axe and told the people not to interfere with their work. Kang Sojun appeared just in time and kicked the toy far away. Our hero told the toys not to interfere with their performance. The toy bear prepared to attack Kang Sojun. Someone shouted, "Welcome to the fair!" The voice became intermittent, and people began to scatter into pixels and disappear. The voice announced in a broken tone that the night opening was about to begin. Hana was surprised. Why did the people disappear, and why did night fall so quickly? Gi-yeon screamed in fear and pointed somewhere to the side. A huge number of monsters were approaching the young people. The player used the Vonda's Blade of Regret. A voice announced that this was a themed dungeon called Monster Party. It also wished everyone a happy day. Kang Sojun dealt with the monsters that approached him. The young man thought, if this isn't a dungeon, then there must be another reason. The Dragon's Eye was activated again. Kang Sojun saw a rabbit holding a shiny ball nearby. The rabbit turned and ran away with the ball. At that moment, a bull with long horns charged at Jang Gi-yeon. Hana fired her revolver and said there were too many monsters. Kang Sojun decided that Hana needed to catch up with the rabbit. Arc, Zone 3. The guards shouted for the approaching man to stop. "What is his name?" The young man raised his hands and said he was from Captain Kim Kang-reel's squad. His name was Kim Hong. Player Kim Hong asked to be connected to Captain Na Han Sok. He had important news for him. One of the guards was surprised. Had this player really returned alive from the Bermuda Islands? Na Han Sok asked how he had managed to do it, and what had happened to the others. Kim Hong replied that he had escaped thanks to his ability to move through space. The others were still in captivity. The fair is located in the Bermuda Triangle and turned out to be a huge trap. At the moment, they had managed to find traces of a dungeon, but it was no lower than D rank. Kim Hyun added that high-level players have no place there. The player explained that everything happening there is somehow connected to memory. The higher a player's level, the more toxic their memories become. The captain said he had already sent reinforcements there. An hour earlier, a group of masked people had been approaching the fair. One of them noted that the place had not turned into a dungeon, although such landmarks were ideal for that. It was the commander of the company's third break group, Yoon Ben Go. The commander asked if K had really gone there. The assistant confirmed that his group had captured the ghost train and arrived there. The assistant added that very little was known about this area, as no one had ever returned alive to tell about it. That was exactly where K had gone. He clearly knew something. The Bermuda Triangle area had existed in the first Dreamside. Perhaps the source of great power was hidden there. The leader said that this is why it must be protected from K. Suddenly, children appeared near the masked men and ran past them screaming. Yoon Ben Go asked what was going on. The assistant asked if the boss could see it too. What kind of place was this? The buildings at the entrance outside the fair looked completely abandoned. But here, everything was as if nothing had happened. It was like before the opening of the second Dreamside. Yoon Ben Go said they needed to figure out what was going on. Yoon Ben Go wondered what kind of event was taking place there. The team leader couldn't believe his eyes. Was this possible? The masked people heard a song performed by Choi Hana. Was she really giving a concert here? That meant she was with K. Yoon Ben Go ordered everyone to move toward the stage. The group leader was surprised when he realized that night had suddenly fallen. Even before that, the whole place had seemed strange to him. A huge monster attacked the group of masked people. After that, people who looked like pirates appeared. Where did they all come from? Yoon Ben Go ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Yoon Ben Go noticed that Kai had appeared in front of him. But where had he come from? Choi Hana also appeared with a revolver in her hands, ready to open fire. Lycan, with a hammer in his hand, also prepared to help his king. Lycan was surprised to see a second-class goblin among the enemies. What was he doing here? How dare he go against the king? The goblin struck and Lycan was sent flying backward. Lycan couldn't believe that some pathetic goblin had managed to defeat him. Suddenly, Chang Hyun appeared and pulled Lycan out of the danger zone. Lycan shouted for Gaion to put him back. He was going to destroy that goblin. Gaion told Lycan to pull himself together and look at himself in the mirror. Gaion continued to run away, while Lycan kept demanding that he bring him back. Suddenly, a huge warrior appeared in front of Chang Giyong. The young man stopped abruptly. Gaion said that the warrior might attack him, or couldn't he hear anything? Suddenly, Hana appeared and deactivated the warrior. She told Lycan and Gaion to hide immediately. Gaion was surprised that Hana was able to handle such an opponent. Lycan agreed that they needed to run. Lycan noted that he wasn't as strong in battle now, so it was better to run. The goblin thought that while he was controlling souls, he had lost his strength. But he didn't regret it, because it was His Majesty's order. Chang Gyun approached and said that Kang So-jun had turned into Imeman. In that form, no monsters could match him. Chang Giyong admitted that he was even scared. The young man shook his head and said that it was him, that he was good, and that no one should touch him. Lycan noted that his energy was completely different now, unlike usual. Gyeon was frightened. Had he done something wrong? Maybe Kai was angry because of that incident. Kay walked past without even noticing Chung Gyeon. Kang So-jun turned around and asked if everyone was okay. Lycan said in confusion that it seemed like there were now two kings. The Goblin King's skill was activated. Lycan pointed at Imanrian and asked the hero who this imposter was. Kang So-jun admitted that he himself did not fully understand what was happening. Kang So-jun said they were moving quickly, so they needed to be ready. The system reported that the player had used the skill, Spiky Frost. Our hero told his comrades that they now had a little time to rest and gather their strength. Gaion noticed that it had suddenly gotten dark, and that monsters become even more active at night. Choi Hana said that it was Kang So-jun, the same face. The hero confirmed that it was indeed him. The young man suggested that all of this might be because of that item. Those strange waves. It all started with the thing the rabbit was carrying. It was clearly a goblin ball. Choi Hana suggested catching up with the rabbit and taking the ball. Kang So-jun said that all the monsters were just illusions, just like the people they had seen during the day. The young man added that he even knew the reason why they appeared. It was probably connected to their memories. After they got off the train, he no longer turned into Immanrian, which meant that no one here could have known about it. Perhaps the object had somehow affected their memory. But why did memories of Immanrian come to the surface? Kang Sojun asked his colleagues what they thought of his appearance in the form of Immanrian. Gion said it was striking. Hana added that it looked delightful, though a little frightening. Kang Sojun said that was the point. The emotion that allows a monster to be pulled into reality is fear. Each of them is afraid of something. That's how all these monsters came to be. And just now, Immanrian appeared as an object of fear from Liken's memories. Kang Sojun wondered what would happen if monsters he himself feared appeared. Could the dragon from the S-Class dungeon really come to life? Kang Sojun said that Captain Kim Kang Rail must definitely be somewhere around here. Otherwise, they wouldn't have found out about the Goblin Ball. There are two goals: find the captain, and find that ball. A huge centipede suddenly appeared in front of the young people. Jang Gion, as usual, screamed loudly out of fear. Kang Sojun realized that they were now seeing his nightmare. Hana took out her revolver and said she would deal with the centipede herself. The centipede's weak spot was its palate. The girl decided to get closer to the vulnerable spot. The centipede opened its mouth and growled loudly. At that moment, a shot rang out. Kang Sojun asked Chang Gion if everything was okay. The young man nodded affirmatively. Gion told him that when he was a child, his father would lock him in a box when he scolded him. And there were always these creatures crawling around in that box. Choi Hana noticed that all the commotion was attracting the monsters. Kang Sojun told everyone to get their weapons ready. Another enemy appeared nearby. It was the aristocrat Norhan, an NPC. Choi Hana said that this NPC was here because of her. She used to hate this character because he reminded her of a certain stalker. Apparently, it's not just monsters that are appearing. The aristocrat Norhan elegantly drew his sword. Kang Sojun said he would deal with him himself. Hana advised him to be careful. He was level 200, if not higher. The rivals faced each other. Kang Sojun couldn't get the better of his opponent. Our hero even thought that this NPC might be impossible to defeat. The protagonist knocked the sword out of his opponent's hands, leaving him unarmed. After that, our hero dealt with Norhan and said it was time to move on. Hana pointed at the tower in fear. The protagonist saw a rabbit holding a goblin ball in its hands. Kang Sojun activated the calm skill and thought that this time, the hare would not escape him. Kang Sojun shouted that he was coming after it and moved forward. The rabbit remained where it was. Kang Sojun jumped high into the air and prepared to attack. The rabbit turned around again and ran away, holding the ball tightly in its hands. Kang Sojun caught up with the rabbit and pushed it. The rabbit lost its balance and dropped the ball. Jang Gion was there to catch it and prepared to catch the ball as it flew down. Jang Gion reached out and grabbed the ball. It was done. However, under the influence of external forces, the ball slipped out of the player's hands. The ball ended up in the hands of another toy, a bear. Kang Sojun thought, who are these guys? The danger detection skill was activated. The protagonist saw that the very same dragon was approaching him. The S-Class Dungeon Master, level 500, Kamushi. A huge clown also appeared and said that they had a guest. Kang Sojun admitted that he had suspected a meeting with Kamushi. Gion asked who Kai had actually summoned. Kang Sojun said he would try to buy some time, while Gion, Hana, and Liken should flee immediately. Kang Sojun was ready to face the huge dragon alone. Suddenly, there was an explosion, and our hero was blown far back by the shockwave. Hana, Gion, and Liken were also thrown in different directions, but then gathered together. Gion logically asked what that was. Changyeon looked ahead and asked if Choi Hana could see it. The young people saw that Kei was standing with a sword in his hand in front of the huge dragon. Kei noticed Immanrian standing on a hill. The young man thought they looked like two peas in a pod. Immanrian held a huge sword in his hand and was ready to fight the dragon. The confrontation happened suddenly and turned out to be very fierce. Lycan wondered if this was how His Majesty had been in the past. Gion still did not understand how Kei was able to split himself in two. Kang Sojun suggested that someone had summoned this guy. There was someone here who feared him. However, it seemed that he was unable to use all of his power. Immanrian continued to fight the dragon, but neither opponent gained a clear advantage. Gion asked if the dragon was really only fighting at half strength. Kang Sojun replied that if they had encountered the real Kamushi, Gion would have collapsed from just looking at him. Kang Sojun thought that he had the same perks. Endless flame of destruction, black smoke. So the characteristics of the weapon needed to defeat the dragon remain the same. If Kei doesn't have such a weapon now, he will lose this battle. Even if Kei couldn't win, he could at least buy some time. Kang Sojun said they had to find the goblin ball. Now is the most opportune moment. There is no time to waste. The young people set off in search of the goblin ball, moving at a rapid pace. Suddenly, a green monster appeared on the path. Kang Sojun swung his sword, cut the monster in two, and continued on his way. Our hero warned his companions to be careful. It might get even more difficult ahead. Suddenly, Kei appeared before the young people. Choi Hana looked at him and her companion and said that Kang Seo-jun was everywhere. Our hero replied that that wasn't all. Kamushi and Kei had made too much noise. This meant that all the monsters were now heading this way. Kang Seo-jun looked at Kei and noticed that he had grown even larger. Apparently, he had absorbed several souls. Hana said that Kang Seo-jun should put him in his place. Hana added that Kang Seo-jun should become an Imamanryang. Gion agreed that a counterattack was necessary. However, Kang Seo-jun said that it wasn't that simple. Imamanryang is a type of skill that requires the absorption of souls to use. But there were children around who could get hurt. Hana said there was no time, and Kang Seo-jun had to make a decision quickly. Once again, a huge warrior appeared, standing in front of Kang Seo-jun. Our hero thought that there must be some other way out. But Kang Seo-jun decided that he couldn't delay any longer and prepared to fight. Suddenly, a bright light appeared. A military SUV emerged from the darkness. The vehicle braked sharply and stopped near Kang Seo-jun. The doors swung open, and our hero peered inside. What kind of vehicle was this? The captain sitting behind the wheel shouted for the young people to get into the car quickly. The driver introduced himself as Captain Kim Kang-rel from the Ark. Kang Seo-jun thanked the captain for his help, as he had saved their lives. The captain was glad he had arrived in time. Kang Seo-jun asked if the headlights had scared the monsters away. The captain replied that the young man was quick-witted. However, the monsters couldn't stand sunlight, but they were indifferent to electric light. Kim Kang-rel added that he had noticed these young people earlier in the day, but since he was looking for the source of the light, he couldn't get close to them. The captain clarified that he had first noticed Choi Han-woo, which had surprised him greatly. Suddenly, a monster landed on the roof of the car next to the driver. Kang Seo-jun looked in the rearview mirror and realized that the monster was not going to let go. The pursuer grabbed the car with his hand and held on tightly. Lee Kan asked Choi Hana if she was okay. The girl called the pursuer a scoundrel. As expected, the doppelganger calmly withstood even a gunshot. Kang Seo-jun opened the car door while driving and climbed onto the roof. The rivals stood facing each other, looking like two peas in a pod. During the hand-to-hand combat, our hero knocked his opponent down and pinned him head down. Kang Seo-jun declared that the game was over. He hung his opponent upside down from the car, and he began to disintegrate into pixels. The car continued on its way, with only Kang Seo-jun remaining on the roof. Kang Seo-jun climbed back into the car and told the captain to speed up. Now they could head to the hideout. In the dark room were young people, some of whom were injured. A young man asked the captain how he was feeling. The captain replied that he was fine. The young man was surprised to see Choi Han. At that moment, the captain asked for some medicine. The young man said that they were very worried about the captain and were glad that he was all right. Kim Kang-ril asked the young people how they ended up there and why reinforcements had not arrived. He then informed his men that an S-class monster had appeared outside. Kei and the dragon he had summoned fought like mad. Kang Seo-jun thought that these people really believed that the Kei outside was the real one. Most likely, they didn't know about Choi Hana's gaming persona, but that wasn't important right now. Kim Kang-ril declared that this was their chance. While Kei was fighting Kamushi, they had to capture the dungeon immediately. Kang Seo-jun was surprised. Was the captain saying they had found the dungeon? One of the captain's subordinates was operating a drone that was currently circling above the fair. Kang Seo-jun said it was simply amazing. In the first dream side, such a discovery could only be dreamed of. The operator informed the captain that they were almost at their destination. Kang Seo-jun noted that the drone was flying beyond the fairgrounds. The drone flew up to the Lotte Tower. Kang Seo-jun asked the operator if they could get closer. The young man refused, saying that they would lose contact. Kang Seo-jun said he could see a dungeon. The operator agreed, but added that this dungeon was unlike any other. It looked like a simple hole, somewhat resembling a black hole. The operator said with annoyance that the drone had stopped responding to commands. The young man added that the drone was starting to descend and was falling. Kang Seo-jun wondered if it could be a monster attack. Our hero saw a human leg and asked to take a closer look. The drone's camera showed members of the company. They were all wearing masks. Kang Seo-jun suggested that they might be the ones who summoned Dark Kei. The commander of the Ark team crushed the fallen drone with his foot. The operator was furious. Choi Hana suggested that this underground lair might belong to the company. Kang Seo-jun disagreed. If the company had really created this place, Dark Kei would definitely not be here. But in any case, they must be stopped. The captain was surprised. Could someone really have summoned Kei? The masked commander was curious about who they were, since they had barely escaped from Kei. The assistant noticed the portal and asked the boss if it was a dungeon. The boss expressed doubt. The boss said he had never seen anything like it before. He pointed to the portal and added that it was best not to get too close. This is where all the power of the Bermuda Triangle is concentrated. Such an opportunity only comes once. If they took advantage of it, it could become their weapon. What would happen if more creatures like Kamushi appeared? Then they wouldn't even have to fear someone like K. The squad leader added that if something went wrong, nothing would stop them from blowing up the place. They could use the dungeon flower to break through the dungeon. The mission of the company is to facilitate dungeon breaks by accelerating their transformation with the dungeon flower. But the members of the organization also study these dungeons and turn them into weapons against players. One such D-class dungeon is a high-speed ghost train, which became the first break group's greatest achievement. The leader declared that if this worked, they would be on par with the first group. Was everyone ready for the promotion? The answer was yes. Suddenly, a bear ran past. The masked leader said that K might appear very soon. There was no time to linger. Monsters appeared in the city and began wreaking havoc. Kang Seo-jun suggested dealing with them as quickly as possible. The captain supported the initiative. Our hero drew his sword and the monsters were cut down. The captain asked the protagonist if they should look for another goblin ball. If they didn't know exactly where the dungeon was, they would have had to search for it. But now, there was no need. The monster inside the dungeon must be involved in all this. If the raid is successful, it will disappear, and the orb will be left without an owner. Choi Hana wondered, what if the people in costumes appeared because of the dungeon break, and were not actually connected to it? Then even a cleanup would not change anything. Kang Seo-jun noted that the dungeon was too large. Apparently everything happened because of the power hidden inside. Jang Gi-yeon was surprised. Was that possible? Kang Seo-jun replied that he didn't have a definite answer. It was just a guess. Our hero noted that they were in a world where this city had become a game location. Kang Seo-jun thought that if they solved the problem with the dungeon, they would be able to deal with the masked men, the fake K, and even the dragon. In normal dungeons, you can get a description of the location itself. But here, the situation is different. Although everything looks somewhat familiar. Maybe it's worth trying again? Something unusual appeared in front of the players. An unknown force had awakened in the fairgrounds. The system announced that a new quest had appeared. Hana was surprised. Right here? Upon completing all the conditions, the system will create a themed park called Pierrot's Puppet Dungeon. You must leave the fair, where the dungeon is hidden. The reward for completing the quest is life, and the punishment is death. The train stopped, and new players emerged from the open doors. They thanked the young man for giving them a ride. Jack said he was ready to fulfill any whim for money. The player noted that this guy was so young, but had already established a business. He had captured a Class D dungeon and now rode freely in it. The player told the captain that it was time to leave. The captain said that they would soon be entering a place where high-ranking players would be better off not going. Besides, none of them had played the first Dreamside. The young man admitted that there were no veterans with extensive experience among them. The captain said that was precisely why they were there. Their experience was limited to what they could handle on their own. But our hero pointed out the problem. It was unknown whether the two best players, Kay and Clark, had been there. The young man asked if it was true that Clark was Choi Hana. The captain said he couldn't believe it. Could the idol Choi Hana really be a Clark player? The captain added that if they were truly invincible, this area would be considered a first-class danger zone. Therefore, extreme caution was necessary. The players approached the agreed-upon location and confirmed that the basement was blocked. But it had definitely been open before they arrived. What was going on? Suddenly, strange plants appeared around them. Long vines began to spread everywhere. The captain asked if anyone knew what kind of plant it was. A long tail appeared from behind a tall building. The player was surprised. Could it be a dragon? The player added that this dragon was definitely S-class. But how did it get here? Player Cheon-seok fell into a trap. Tentacles wrapped around his leg and lifted him off the ground. The plant's tentacles hid underground, dragging the player along with them. The captain suggested that it was a so-called parasite, similar to those that appeared during the dungeon transformation while they were still in training. If this place becomes a dungeon, the city will definitely come to an end. The captain declared that this problem must be solved. However, was there any way to do so? The parasite was spreading in all directions, devouring everything in its path. Kang Seo-jun, who was nearby, held his sword forward and told everyone to step aside. Our hero activated the spiked sword skill. The young man tore through even metal, anything that came within reach. This was the Bermuda Triangle, a place where many people had mysteriously disappeared. They had all been devoured by this creature. Kang Seo-jun thought that the entire area of this sector was a place where dungeons constantly appeared. There must have been as many players affected by these parasites as there were monsters at the fair itself. Kang Seo-jun said that he now understood what kind of place it was, something like a greenhouse. It would take a long time for it to completely turn into a dungeon. The conditions for that were complicated. However, they still had to hurry. They had to find the boss monster before the company did. Kang So-jun said that if they can defeat the main monster, the transformation process will stop. This is the only way to prevent a new dungeon from appearing. The officer noted that no matter how hard they tried, they would not be able to stop a transformation of this scale. For starters, it would be worth returning to the Ark. Kang So-jun said they couldn't afford to do that. He was sure that the company would try to speed up the transition using the dungeon flower. They had to go there immediately and destroy the place. Kang So-jun urged everyone to follow him and approach the portal leading to the dungeon. Jung Gi-yeon announced that he would go first. Kang So-jun told him to be careful. Then he asked Choi Han to go ahead, while he planned to follow right behind them. Kang So-jun checked to make sure no one was left behind. Our hero stepped back and said that in that case, it was time for him to go too. The system announced, the player has discovered Pierrot's secret greenhouse. Possession of the goblin hat has been confirmed. The player was led by an unknown stream. Choi Hana thought, isn't this the same fairground? It seems they were accidentally transported through the tower. Leekin asked if Hana had seen the king. The goblin wanted to know where his majesty was. Hana replied that she didn't know. He must have moved to another place. She suggested looking for him. Leekin agreed. Just in case, Leekin said he wasn't afraid of anything. Nothing scared him here. Choi Hana thought he was acting like a child. Leekin shouted at the girl not to rush. Hana noticed that she had never really talked to Leekin before. She thought that Leekin hadn't been a monster from the beginning. Had his memories returned? Leekin had said that he wasn't a monster at all, but a proud descendant of a goblin clan. The girl asked how he had become like this. She had never seen monsters become NPCs before. Leekin replied that he didn't remember. Hana found the situation strange. Leekin insisted on finding Kang So-jun. Maybe this goblin had a hidden quest? Suddenly, a huge dragon appeared in front of the girl and the goblin. Choi Hana was surprised. Why had Kamushi appeared here? Dark K looked closely at Choi Han. It was difficult to understand what was on his mind. Leekin was also confused and didn't know how to act. Choi Hana pointed her revolver forward and said that Kamushi had already defeated him. The system reported that the player was being led by an unknown force. The secret greenhouse of the puppeteer Pierrot was discovered. Kang So-jun couldn't understand what kind of place it was. The floor, walls, and ceiling were painted white, like a blank canvas. Even shadows weren't reflected. What kind of space was this? The protagonist thought he was now in the kingdom of the game. A voice announced that a precious guest had arrived. Kang So-jun shouted loudly, "Who is that?" With a sword in his hand, he approached the young man. The young man extended his hand and said he was pleased to meet him. His name was No-en-so. No-en-so stated that they must first show a video. On the screen, a young man was moving around the city. The young man said that it was October 2nd, 2021, his first day at work at the company. He had never been so close to his dream and promised himself he would do everything he could. But life had other plans. No-en-so said he was very nervous. No matter what he did, everything went wrong. If he was asked to make 10 copies, he made 100. The next day, he arrived at his workplace at dawn. It wasn't really necessary to come so early, but he wanted to be the best employee. Kang So-jun noticed that Dreamside had just opened that day. No-en-so added that at 6 in the morning, he went to the fair location. There, he encountered Pierrot. It was the dungeon boss. No-en-so had no idea what was going on. He froze in fear, and the monster killed him instantly. At that moment, the young man's only thought was that he had wasted his life. However, the boss was holding a goblin ball. For some reason, Pierrot used it and brought No-en-so back to life. The young man added that he had become a puppet, completely deprived of memory, unable to feel anything because of Pierrot's curse. In addition, the monster gave the young man the ball that had saved him. The boss told the young man to destroy the humans, and at that moment, he quietly disappeared. A loud voice invited people to the fair, a world full of hopes and dreams. No-en-so added that after that, people who came here fell into a night opening. The fear that settled in their minds soon turned into monsters that pursued the survivors. However, the real tragedy only happened when those who managed to survive finally realized what was going on. They understood the main rule. Every time a new person arrived, the night shift began and another monster appeared. Because of this, every time someone new showed up, they took their life before nightfall. The problem was that in the end, they themselves died. Kang So-jun asked why he was being told this. No-en-so said that he didn't want to be forgotten, or to prove that he wasn't to blame. These were just the thoughts of a former employee named No-en-so. No-en-so said, "Thank you. Will the player recognize this doll?" Kang So-jun was surprised. Could he be the bear? It turns out that No-en-so attacked them and then escaped using a ball. No-en-so said that the doll the players encountered was not him at all. It was just a cog in the machine that kept the fair running smoothly. Kang So-jun asked, Are they all under someone's control? The bear doll said that only she knew No-and-so's true thoughts. So came to his senses about a month after this place started looking like this. Wandering around the fairgrounds, he gradually began to understand what had happened. For example, that he had died and then been resurrected. However, he was just a thought attached to a ball and couldn't do anything. Every time his memories returned, he wandered around trying to save the people who were stuck, but even that never ended well. On the other hand, he was able to understand why there was no difference between day and night here. Pierrot loves to read dark stories. Apparently, he is fascinated by moments filled with fear that lead from a happy day to a terrifying night. It's a strange hobby. He enjoys watching people make extreme choices in moments of pain. No-and-so said that every day he could feel all of Pierrot's emotions, which made his hair stand on end. No-and-so was able to get through the pain and only came to his senses 2 months later. No-and-so asked our hero, "Are you Kay?" Kang Seo-jun was surprised. Did No-and-so know him? The young man replied that he had also been a player in the first Dream Side. No-and-so added that he had never been able to earn any rewards. The young man began to disintegrate into pixels. No-and-so said there wasn't much time. Breaking free from Pierrot's chains meant losing the ability to exist even as a thought. Mr. K must do something. Only he is capable of doing it. Since he already had the goblin hat, it would be within his power. Kang Seo-jun received the goblin ball from his companion. Our hero couldn't believe he was holding it in his hands. The system announced that the player had obtained the goblin ball from No-and-so's thoughts. The ball now belongs to the player. The title, King of Goblins, has been obtained. No-and-so said that to start with, Mr. Kai must become the master of the ball to reveal his true power. To defeat Pierrot, the artifact must be completely under the player's control. In addition, if the chance to fight the boss arises, do not close your eyes or even breathe near him. No-and-so wanted to share information about the second Dream Side, but his voice began to falter. Kay must be wary of the regular updates that took place every year. According to information from Pierrot, Kay is in the greatest danger. Hana screamed for Leekon to hide immediately. The bullet was aimed directly at its target. Dark Kay, with a ball in his hand, stood against Choi Hana. His opponent activated the daggers and threw them straight at the girl. The daggers flew in a continuous stream toward the Clark player. Choi Hana activated her Eagle Eye skill and managed to dodge them. Choi Hana thought that no one had figured out what Dark Kay was doing, but at least he was different from the real one. He didn't seem capable of thinking straight. Hana shouted, "Does this guy really think he's invincible?" The bomb skill was activated. Immediately after that, explosive bullets from the revolver flew toward Dark Kay. Dark Kay tried to defend himself by swinging his sword to deflect the explosive bullets. Choi Hana continued her relentless barrage. Dark Kay defended himself effectively with his sword. Hana assumed that this guy was stronger than Kay. However, he was still a monster, even though he possessed the skills of the original. The girl repeated that this Dark Kay was still a dummy. She snapped her fingers and told him to disappear. Explosive bullets fired at Dark Kay with even greater intensity. They flew everywhere, but Dark Kay continued to use his sword to defend himself. After the shooting stopped, the girl approached the spot where Dark Kay had been standing. Only his sword remained there. Dark Kay was buried under rubble. The girl thought he was a real monster. Choi Hana told Likano that they were leaving and expressed her hope that Kang Seo-jun was okay. In the corridor of the fairground tower, the players were running away from the monster chasing them. The players didn't understand why Kay had been left behind. Dark Kay didn't notice the obstacles and kept walking toward his target. Another explosion rang out, and the players scattered in all directions. One of the fleeing players was surprised. Was Kay really against them? The captain said that Kay had caught all the monsters at the fair, including the dragon. Apparently, it was time to catch the players. In the darkness, the silhouette of a girl with a pistol appeared. The captain couldn't believe it was her. A shot rang out, and the bullet flew past the player's head. The player turned around and asked what Miss Choi Hana was doing now. Hana expressed her hope that she had arrived in time. Kang Seo-jun decided it was time to make his mark, since he was now the owner of the Goblin Ball. Drops of blood landed on the Goblin Ball. The ball immediately glowed brightly. Kang Seo-jun squinted, thinking that he could go blind like this. Thanks to the royal mark, Takabi's spirit took on its true form. A smaller glowing object hovered in front of the young man. The system reported that the Takabi King's ring had been obtained. The ring of King Takabi can materialize a soul. Now our hero understood why Leekon had said that he needed to obtain Takabi's spirit to strengthen the royal majesty. The title of King Tokabi was confirmed, and the mark was complete. Thanks to the royal mark, Tokabi's hat took on its true form. The system announced that the set effect had been activated. The skill Piercing Gaze was obtained. It allowed him to see souls and distinguish between good and evil within them. Kang So-jun thought that with this skill, he could separate souls and bring people back. The protagonist correctly assumed that the reason lay in Tokabi's spirit. A large number of people and monsters had been reborn by this spirit. Those who, like Mr. No Yonsu, were reborn as monsters, destroyed the monsters that were supposed to appear in the first place. Gradually, using the souls of the victims who ended up here as the main ingredient, he created monsters en masse. The condition that allowed the objects of fear to materialize was added thanks to the dungeon boss Pierrot. Kang So-jun said that his skill, when confronted with the spirit of Tokabi, who could materialize souls, created this Lata world. Kang So-jun was surprised. Could this place be collapsing because No Yonso's thoughts were disappearing? The protagonist noticed that the portal had already opened. An unknown force drew him in. Our hero entered the secret room of Pierrot's puppeteer seeds, the movie theater in Lata Tower. The archer continuously fires arrows. He doesn't believe he can defeat Mr. K. K and Dark K continue to fight. The archer thought it was impossible. K said that there was some kind of uncontrollable chaos here. Now he understands where the portal is located. Choi Hana chose the most advantageous position to attack the enemy. Hana said they need to be patient a little longer. Lycan shouted that he sees the true king. The rivals paused briefly, sizing each other up and preparing to attack. Kang So-jun thought that this was him from the past, from the dream side, around level 200. He was filled with determination to destroy. His stats were still fixed. That meant it would be easy to dodge him. Kang So-jun believed he knew all of his opponent's weaknesses. In the dark, K's hands was a sword that our hero had used back when he lacked the attack power to make up for his defensive weaknesses. Kang So-jun thought that this was why he had quite a few weaknesses. One of these weaknesses was a short but inevitable pause after an attack. Kang So-jun decided that he must use this in the upcoming battle. During the short pause, Kang So-jun kicked his opponent in the face. In those days, to increase the speed of his sword, the protagonist sacrificed the characteristics of one piece of equipment. Kang So-jun said that he now had much more experience than before. Choi Hana took aim at the dark-clad K from close range. The next moment, a double attack occurred. Kang So-jun attacked from behind, and a bullet from Hana's revolver hit its target from the front. Choi Hana said that Mr. Kang So-jun had definitely saved them. Jung Gi-yeon declared that a fake could never compare to the original. Lee Kan added that he was glad to see His Majesty. Kang So-jun asked how they were feeling. Hana replied that everything was fine. Our heroes said that they couldn't relax and had to get ready. Hana asked if there was someone else like Kamusha. The final boss of this place appeared, the puppeteer Pierrot. The puppeteer asked who dared to take his spirit. The final boss approached the group of players. Pierrot asked who dared to touch what belonged to the king. The player wasn't even worthy of being a victim of this dungeon. The protagonist thought that this monster's diction and tone were better than those of the D-rank boss Samchokwi. This was a monster that was born with intelligence. Gaion was indignant. Why did this boss appear so suddenly, since they hadn't finished the task yet? Kang So-jun said they had been tricked. The spirit of Tokabi has the ability to materialize, but this is only materialization and does not grant absolute power. He swears allegiance to his creator, but even he cannot control everyone when there are too many of them. Absolute power belongs only to the king. Kang So-jun was surprised. Is this magical energy? It is a magical power used by Mazoku and demons. This power is only available to beings from the magical world. Among them, beings with intelligence are called Mazoku. In other words, this guy is a magical monster above level 300. Kang So-jun asked Pierrot if he was a Mazoku. The monster laughed and said he was inviting them to their doom. The boss monster, Pierrot the puppeteer, announced the creation of an action zone. The player entered this action zone. The protagonist looked around. There was fog. Kang So-jun realized what Mr. No Yonsu had been talking about. The dense magical energy emanating from Pierrot enveloped the space and blocked his view. Kang So-jun thought that dragon vision was useless. It was an annoying skill. Kang So-jun saw the player and thought that this man was definitely from Mr. Kim Kang-ryul's squad. However, he had been poisoned by magical energy. Hana screamed for everyone to hold their breath and keep their eyes closed. Where was Mr. Kang So-jun? Kang So-jun thought he was explaining how to protect themselves, but it seemed useless. Pierrot demanded that they return his spirit. Kang So-jun fought against the players who didn't even know they were dealing with the famous K. His opponents thought this would never end. It was good that Ms. Ha wasn't there. Our hero activated his imperturbability skill. Imperturbability helped him hold on, but if he tried too long, he would become Pierrot's puppet. The only way out was to defeat him before the magic completely consumed him. Kang So-jun established a mental connection with the magic ring. After that, a new penetrating gaze was activated. The ghostly flames allowed our hero to control souls. The power of the skill depended on the number of souls used. Kang So-jun believed that this number of evil spirits should be enough. The protagonist used a power that burned magical energy. Perhaps this was the true power of the spirit that Mr. No Yun-soo had spoken of. The monster said that it was amusing to watch a human try to resist. This man would become his puppet anyway. He had courage, so he would become the most impressive puppet in his collection. Dark K said, "If the area of effect is so vast, then the players here are doomed. Was all this planned?" Due to the ghostly flames, Lycan changed size again and became huge. Dark K said he was sick and tired of this monster's words. An unknown force was drawing souls toward it. Piero said that it was called Karma. The system reported that the boss monster, Piero the Puppeteer, had been defeated. Piero the Puppeteer's amusement park could not be turned into a dungeon. The captain asked Mr. Kang So-jun, "What is going on here?" One of the players was lying unconscious. The young man asked in fear, "Did I really destroy that person?" Kang So-jun thought that those who had been poisoned by magic had completely lost their minds. They were nothing but madmen. They wouldn't even remember stabbing their comrades. They would only see the consequences. The captain told the player to get himself together. It wasn't over yet. They mustn't give up and had to get out of there alive. The captain asked our hero if the boss monster had really been destroyed. Kang So-jun replied that he had even gained experience for it. For defeating the boss, the player received the title Seeker of Truth. Our hero was naturally surprised that they even gave a title for destroying the boss. The young people said it would be better if Kang So-jun came over to them. Everyone looked out the window and was surprised to see that the entire city had disappeared. The captain was confused. What was happening? Two conflicting messages appeared at the same time. Everything except Lotte Wald and the tower had disappeared, as if there had been a mistake. This reminded our hero of the Dreamside incident. Kang So-jun said that they were isolated. It wasn't just darkness, it was emptiness, absolute nothingness. The captain asked what that meant. Kang So-jun asked Hana what she thought. If the dungeon was completed the moment the boss was defeated, what would happen? Choi Hana was surprised. Is that even possible? Kang So-jun said that it was extremely rare, but there had already been a similar case in Dreamside. The captain asked if Kai was referring to the first refund incident. The young man confirmed that it was a dungeon without a boss. The first refund incident was a case in Dreamside when, at the moment the boss was destroyed, just before the location turned into a dungeon, a bug occurred that completed the transformation. Players nicknamed this buggy dungeon the Lost One. It was a dungeon with no exit. It was impossible to escape from it. The captain thought that even though these players were called support groups, they were all newbies with little experience. It was too dangerous to just send them in like that. The captain was surprised. Could it really be a dragon? The parasite's activity was decreasing. Could the situation really be stabilizing? The players told the captain that it was time to go inside. The captain agreed and ordered everyone to get ready. There was little time left. They had to find the survivors before the transformation in the dungeon was complete. The squad leader added that they had to at least save Clark and Kay. If they lost them, there would be no hope left for ARK. Everything around them began to shake. The player was frightened. Was this an earthquake? The captain shouted that they had to get out quickly, but his voice began to break and fade away. The captain realized that something had gone wrong and communication had been lost. The captain and his assistant stood in front of the protective dome. The player said it was very dangerous inside. Were they really there? A system message appeared saying that an error had occurred and the system was recovering. The officer was surprised. Could there really be bugs in this world? They needed to contact ARK immediately. They had to find information about cases where bugs occurred during the transformation of a location into a dungeon in the Dreamside. What are the ways to get out of such a situation? The second day of isolation in the dungeon began. The players came to their senses, divided into groups, and began to comb through this part of Lotte Wald that had been cut off from the world. The main task was to find a way out. Everything was searched, the dungeon, the ground level, even the top of Lotte Tower. But nothing was found. A player said that their phones were out of service. The entire area outside Lotte Wald and the tower had become a restricted zone. Kang So-jun realized that they were completely isolated. The captain remembered that during the first Dreamside, many had lost their accounts, stuck in such lost dungeons. Even if they had 3 lives left, it was impossible to enter the game. The assistant was surprised. Couldn't they get out? Kang So-jun said that they were simply looking in the wrong place. Our hero stated that there was one difference between the Dreamside and the current situation. During the first Dreamside, players were kicked out of the game and couldn't return. Now, they can't even log out of the system. The captain asked for a detailed explanation. Our hero wasn't sure if it would work. But if this place was still a game, it was worth a try. The captain and his assistants eagerly awaited Kang So-jun's explanation and instructions. The protagonist said that it was necessary to stage a dungeon breakout. Information came in that Captain Na Han-sok had reached the exit. However, as they approached, an earthquake struck, and they fell into this place. It was fortunate that they weren't trapped here with everyone else. This was Captain Na Han-sok's support team. On the second day of wandering through the dungeon, the players stumbled upon Captain Na Han-sok's support group, who were also trapped here. They received information from them about what was happening outside. The players were delighted, deciding that their supplies would allow them to hold out for a while. But something unexpected happened. The players said that with such food supplies, they would be able to hold out for several days. However, something strange began to happen with the inventory. One of the players said that when he opened his inventory, items fell out. Now it is impossible to close the inventory. The captain suggested that this place was a blind spot for the system. Kang So-jun said that the system was not working properly here. It was not advisable to open the inventory unless necessary. The captain noted that dungeon break is a system function. If the inventory isn't working now, other functions may also be useless. The captain understood that they had no other options besides breakthrough. But they also needed to consider what would happen if they failed. The protagonist thought that Captain Kim Kang-ryul probably wanted to prepare them for panic. Hope is always contagious. The young man said there was no need to worry. First, they needed to find them. Them meant the company. They were definitely here too. They couldn't have gotten out so easily. They needed to find their traces and offer cooperation. Then they would have a better chance of escaping. Kim Kang-ryul was surprised. Did Kay really believe they would agree to help? They were terrorists who wanted to destroy Earth. Kay replied that he knew that, but he was sure they would help. The company was no ordinary organization. They provoked underground breakthroughs and spread the spore virus around the world. But their goal was simple: survival. Ultimately, all their actions were dictated by the desire to survive. In a world ruled by monsters, they had switched sides. The company was created for the sake of survival. Kay said they would help because they also wanted to live. The Dragon Eyes were activated. The captain shouted for everyone to prepare for battle. The opponents replied that they had no intention of surrendering so easily. Kang So-jun ordered these people to stop. One of the masked men stood with a sword at the throat of player Jang Gi-young. The enemy said he was ready to destroy all the players. Kang So-jun said he still couldn't figure out where Jang Gi-young had gone. Gi-young apologized for being suddenly kidnapped. Kang So-jun told the masked men to calm down. They hadn't come here to fight. He had a business proposal for them. The commander of the company squad asked what Kay was up to. Kay said that these people had worked very hard, distributing flowers in the dungeons to complete the transformation, and now they were locked up here for no reason. They must be in shock. They had been prepared to face monsters, but certainly not this turn of events. Kang So-jun called on his opponents to remain calm and reasonable. The masked man shouted that he knew how to get out of there. Kang So-jun offered cooperation. He said that in that case, everything would go smoothly. The choice was theirs. The masked man said he saw no reason to listen to Kay. Kay was surprised. Were they really waiting for the system to be restored? Our hero said that these people didn't understand anything. Restoring the system didn't mean that technicians would come and fix everything. Suddenly, a strange noise appeared. Kang So-jun shouted for everyone to step aside. Scissors appeared. The masked people shouted that everyone should hide in shelters. The scissors were destroying everything. Kang So-jun added that everything these scissors touch simply disappears. These scissors cut through space itself. This is the easiest way to restore the game, a rollback. Our hero said that the system rolls back to the moment before Baga existed. The scissors are a cut function. They don't erase everything in their path. It's all part of the system restoration process. It just follows certain instructions. Erase, roll back, repeat. It really tries to roll back all the space. There's no time to think. Kang So-jun asked the commander of the company squad if he had changed his mind. The masked man said they agreed, but they had one condition. The commander added that he and Kay must sign a contract. This contract does not have the same binding force as a written one. It is only a verbal agreement that does not directly affect the players. However, if someone breaks the contract, they will be branded a traitor to the oath. Players who violate the agreement will see this title whenever they interact with each other. They will suffer negative effects in the office, and various restrictions await them in the game itself. These effects are temporary, and the title disappears on its own over time. Therefore, the agreement was not particularly popular. The masked squad leader said that he wanted to protect himself in this way. After all, Kai doesn't trust him. Kang So-jun asked if he would trust a person in a mask. Of course not. Kang So-jun thought that during the first Dreamside, the company had deceived players many times. Our hero thought that an enemy is an enemy. As soon as they got out of there, he wouldn't stand on ceremony and would simply attack the masked men. The protagonist thought that this man was very cunning, but agreed to make such a deal. Yoon Byung-gu and Kang So-jun agreed not to harm each other even for 2 days after this matter was settled. The agreement was made. Anyone who broke their oath would be punished. Yoon Byung-gu asked Kang So-jun what his plan was. Our hero replied that it was simple. Their opponents had a supply of dungeon flowers. Kang So-jun said they would use them, and he would explain the rest on the way. Yoon Byung-gu asked where Kang So-jun was going. The young man replied that they would go where it all began. Both groups set off for the tower. Kang So-jun hoped there would be no traps there. After walking a short distance, the commanders saw a monster. What is that? Could it be the boss monster Piero? The keen eye skill was activated. The player activated the special skill, Equipment, Tokebi's Ring, Tokebi's Call. The level of the summoned spirit exceeded the player's level. The probability of success was high. Yoon Byung-gu was extremely surprised. Could this be K's abilities? Kang So-jun thought that this monster did not exude bloodlust or malice. He simply obeyed this guy. It had been dead for too long. Its soul was too damaged to be returned to the material world. It had been dead for too long. Kang So-jun told the masked man that now was his chance to leave. They needed to get the flowers of the dungeon and plant them all over the room. Yoon Byung-gu thought that any resistance was now pointless. The commander ordered the masked men to quickly plant the dungeon flowers. The flowers were planted and began to grow rapidly. Kang So-jun was surprised at how many flowers they had. Did they grow them themselves? The masked man replied that they had 38 flowers. Jang Gi-yong felt a strange vibration. Choi Hana said that it had begun. The dungeon breakout. Piero must follow his soul. Kang So-jun said they should follow the monster. Yoon Byung-gu was surprised. There were so many of those creatures there. Kang So-jun thought that Piero was a monster boss by nature. Therefore, when a dungeon breakout occurs, he is the only one who instinctively knows where the exit is. Choi Hana said they were already there. Kang So-jun warned them not to stop. The players and masked people saw the dragon appear. Could it be Kamush? Kang So-jun was surprised. Is the dragon still alive? It seems that his doppelganger realized that his weakness is sunlight. But he's still a dragon, so he's not dead. Our hero thought that maybe he could use it, specifically Tokebi's hat. The ghost flame skill was activated. The protagonist ordered him to get up. Kamush rose onto his hind legs and roared loudly. Kang So-jun ordered everyone to immediately climb onto the dragon. Our hero ordered Kamus to fly. Kei shouted for everyone to hold on tight, and Kamush rushed forward, overcoming arrows and scissors. Kang So-jun searched for an exit and finally found it. The young man corrected the dragon's direction. Kamush maneuvered to avoid being hit by the scissors. Kang So-jun said that the dragon was unstable, and that they needed to hold on tighter. The protagonist thought that the exit was very close. They couldn't die here. Kamush flew toward the portal. The young man thought, I hope it doesn't close. Kang So-jun ordered the dragon to fly straight into the hole. The dragon obeyed and slipped through the portal with everyone on its back. Kang So-jun looked back and realized they had escaped. Everyone was back in the city. One of the players said that the tsunami and the strange scissors had all disappeared. Lada Tower returned, and the rollback was complete. The players realized that they were truly saved. All thanks to Mr. K. However, half of the dragon Kamush's body was missing. Could those at the end of the tail not have been saved? Kang So-jun thought that Kamush had not managed to fly completely through the portal before it closed. The player couldn't believe that not everyone had been saved. The captain told everyone to calm down and check their equipment. Kang So-jun thought that these players had lost their comrades, but they quickly pulled themselves together. It seemed like they were used to it. When the world turned into Dreamside 2, countless people died or were injured. Kang So-jun thought that the dead left only their souls behind, but all the souls he saw with his penetrating gaze had no self. They were just a collection of memories. The essence of the soul, its behavior. All of this is determined solely by memories of past lives. Perhaps that is why Piero found it so easy to control them, because they were just empty shells filled with memories. When these memories finally disappear, they disappear forever. Yoon Byung-gu told Kei that it was time to go. The man in the mask added that Kei's contract protects them, but the next time they meet, they will fight. Kang So-jun approached the motionless dragon. The young man thought that this body had originally been a dragon. However, the spirit of Tokebi and the power of Piero had given it a new form. Its strength was at the 100th level. Perhaps it could still be useful for something. Kang So-jun noticed that Goron was drooling at the sight of such a delicacy. The system reported that Goron had swallowed the body of the black dragon Kamush. Goron's fullness level increased significantly. Goron gained a new ability. Kang Seo-jun told Goron that he shouldn't have done that. The dragon was bugged, and he could have easily been poisoned. Lycan said that perhaps in the first dream side, Goron was older in level. However, here he was the boss. It was necessary to behave properly. Choi Hana realized that this place had been Pierrot's trap from the very beginning. Kang Seo-jun suggested that this was not the work of Pierrot alone. Pierrot wanted to hear the screams of the players who would suffer when day turned to night. But did the dolls really defend Lottavold so fiercely just for that? Someone had put their heart and soul into this place, creating this ordinary, joyful Lotta world, their own amusement park that they wanted to protect so badly. Choi Han's phone rang. The girl was delighted when she realized she had a signal. The caller asked what was going on. Was Kang Seo-jun nearby? Choi Hana said that the young man was nearby, but what had happened? The caller said he was on his way to Lotta World. Choi Hana received information that the ARK had been attacked. It was in the 3rd district, where the hospital was located. It was unclear how the Ludayashers had managed to get so far. People need to be evacuated immediately, or everyone could die. An employee shouted that they had broken through the defenses, and that they needed to get out of there immediately. There's no time, but there are too many wounded. Panic is everywhere. A player in armor confirmed that they need to leave immediately. A complete lockdown of the ARK has been announced. This hospital was the only underground facility in the entire ARC. It was built when the surface became too dangerous due to monsters. Therefore, the hospital became a refuge for the elderly, children, women, and the wounded, anyone who couldn't defend themselves. Now the ARC has simply abandoned them to their fate by blocking off the 3rd district. A wounded old man wondered if they had broken through the defenses. A woman, looking around fearfully, asked if they could have done such a thing. An employee told the patients that the place was no longer safe. Cannibals were throwing them out of buses and cars. The situation was only getting worse, and tensions were rising. An order was given for everyone to quickly move to an underground passage. The employee said that the inspector must also leave immediately. But what was really going on there? People saw that the road had ended. The passage to the shelter was blocked by fallen rocks. People were very scared because everything was collapsing. The captain thought that the lizard people were advancing too quickly. The inspector thought they might not make it. He was too big to get through that way. The player asked, "Are they really unable to get through this way?" The employee confirmed that it would not be easy to clear the way. Time would be wasted. The player declared that in that case he had no choice, and told his comrades to get to the surface. The staff members were frightened. Was the player really going to lead everyone to certain death? The player saw no other way out. If they stayed here, they would be cut off from the outside world. The employee said that these were ordinary patients, not players, and that there were monsters everywhere above them. The player reminded them that the order to lock down had already been given, but locking down the area was tantamount to a death sentence. The player thought that ARK had decided to sacrifice the 3rd area for the sake of the 2nd. Therefore, objections were not accepted. If they wanted to survive, they had to go to the surface. After they started moving, the group leader told everyone to stop. He felt heat. The man-eating lizards were somewhere nearby. Fortunately, the 2nd area was already close. They had to get there before they appeared. Suddenly, there was an explosion. The captain noted that it was very close. The players said that if things continued like this, they would soon be there. A man-eating lizard appeared unexpectedly and destroyed one of the civilians. Panic ensued. The girl tried to escape from the pursuit. The man-eating lizard swung its spear. Armed players fought continuously against the evil creatures that were everywhere. The players shouted that they needed to move to the 2nd area, where they would be safe. The captain assessed the situation and thought that there were no high-ranking man-eaters in sight. That was good, but something was wrong. The inspector looked up and realized he was wrong. In front of her was a huge man-eating lizard holding a passenger bus in its mouth. Jack was delighted and said he was very glad that the players were unharmed. Kay and Clark entered the train car. There were other players in the car as well. Kang Seo-jun asked Ji Sang-soo who all these people were. Jack explained that the Ark was in danger. There were man-eating lizards in the city. The vanguard had already broken through the defense line. The commander didn't believe it. Could it be true? Ji Sang-soo added that the military was trying to fight back, but the forces were too unequal. Neither weapons, defensive skills, nor strategic tricks were helping. Kang Seo-jun realized that all the people in the train car were refugees from the Ark. Jack said that wasn't all. There was a full-grown dragon, a giant horned man-eating lizard. Ji Sang-soo added that he had broken through the Ark's defenses. This man-eating lizard is half-dragon, so it's incredibly strong. It's not invulnerable, but it's capable of razing an entire city to the ground. Jack noted that the second and first districts of the Ark had stronger defenses. It was unlikely that he would be able to break through to the second district. Kang So-jun suggested that this was not the case. Most likely, this monster had made a breakthrough from the underground. The inspector shouted for everyone to duck. Debris and fragments of machinery began flying everywhere. The captain thought that even the 3 ghosts of the running train didn't seem so scary. The legion of lizards was already here. There was nothing to lose, and the officer tried to protect the civilians. The detective took the wave hunter's spear from his inventory. He thought that these lizards, fortunately, were not D rank. However, these creatures were moving in legions. It was difficult to fight them now. To avoid a confrontation, the captain decided to lead the people to the second zone. The detective saw the people who had arrived here first. But why couldn't they enter? The people were begging for the gate to be opened. The lizards were already approaching. One of the civilians covered his eyes. A bright beam of light was directed at him. The guard told everyone to move back immediately. He would open fire if there was any disorder. People were angry. Why weren't they opening the gate? The guard shouted for everyone to move aside. A shot rang out, and the bullet protected the young man. The detective watched and couldn't believe his eyes. These people were really in danger. On the speeding ghost train, Kang So-jun realized that these people needed peace and rest. The train stopped. The track ahead was blocked. Jack assumed that there had been a large-scale battle if everything was destroyed to such an extent. Kang So-jun said there was no other option but to keep going. Ji Sang-soo could stay behind to clean up and take care of the evacuees. Kang So-jun and his squad climbed to the surface. He was horrified by what he saw. It looked like there had been a battle with man-eating monsters. Judging by the silence, everything had calmed down. Goron grumbled that there was nothing tasty here. However, he hinted that there was fresh food nearby. Kang So-jun noted that Goron had become more sociable after eating kamusha. Kang So-jun thought they were almost at the center. The young man asked the captain how far it was to the arch. The officer replied that it depended on the sector. Sector 3 was somewhere around here. Given the circumstances, the man-eating lizards might be heading for the residence. The assistant reported that the wall had collapsed and the man-eating lizards had entered Sector 3. Kang So-jun wondered what kind of power could destroy a wall. It sounded like a giant horned lizard. The system reported that players had entered the Ark base, Sector 3. The sound barrier was activated. It became so quiet, as if the monster's screams had been washed away. This place was soundproofed. But Ark was just a camp for survivors created by players. The NPC village was officially recognized by the system. It was a safe zone in the capital, the only place in Dreamside where the dungeon was not open to visitors. It was a place designated as a sanctuary. A village had naturally formed here, becoming a base for survivors of the war with the dungeon. All players received a notification on their smartphones about a 3-hour lockdown. The lost connection was restored. The captain assumed that Kang So-jun was late. Ark consists of Zones 2 and 3 surrounding Zone 1. If Zone 3 is breached and a cordon is set up, all paths from Zone 3 to Zone 2 will be blocked. The player said that his team had not yet received the second update. He couldn't work in a place with so many monsters because he wouldn't be able to communicate. Kang So-jun said they would go anyway. Maybe the door wasn't locked yet. Our hero peeked out from behind cover and saw the lizards. Hana said there were too many of them. The young man suggested that something was wrong here. If a Class C dungeon broke through, there should be more of them. These are just ordinary man-eating lizard soldiers, goblin-level minions. Kang So-jun thought that the footage Ji Sang-soo had shown him only showed soldiers. There wasn't a single commander in sight, not even the lowest-ranking one. Was there really a dungeon breakout? Either way, there were fewer of them now. They had to keep moving. After a while, the young men arrived at their destination. Ahead of them, they could see the gate to the 2G zone. Gunshots rang out. The shots hit the people standing in front of the gate. Cries for help could be heard. Kang So-jun was surprised. What was happening here? The detective said that it was a matter of choice and priorities. Food supplies in the Ark were extremely limited. If too many people gathered in this zone, they could die of starvation. Kang So-jun was surprised. Was that a reason to destroy them? The Ark is an organization whose sole purpose is to preserve humanity. Just as Noah's Ark took a pair of every living creature to preserve life, the Ark Dreamside preserved the best representatives of humanity, promising them privileges in the future. The organization protects refugees fleeing the sprawling underground labyrinths, a government created to protect the country. Could all of this have disappeared without a trace? Kang So-jun hoped that, given the high-level players in Dreamside, a different decision would be made here than in the first version. However, it was naive to think so. Vagrants without even decent equipment, or the wounded, the elderly, children, those who couldn't become players, the unworthy. That was the third district. Kang So-jun said it was similar to something else. One could not deny the logic behind preserving the human race. The more capable people there are, the easier it is to conquer the dungeons in this world. The voice shouting "Stop" sounded familiar to our hero. Kang So-jun recognized Detective Oh Dae-soo. The inspector shouted to open the gates immediately. The guard saw a wave-subduing spear in one of the people. That meant he was a high-level player. The guard told the player to state his name and affiliation. The inspector said he had recently joined and gave his name. The guard said that no matter how experienced Oh Dae-soo was, Ark was closed, and they weren't letting anyone in. Everyone had to leave. Oh Dae-soo said that there were wounded people there. If they didn't get help, they could die. The answer was the same. They shouted for people not to approach. One more step forward, and they would be considered enemies. Warning shots rang out. The guard apologized and said that they were all under K's command. He couldn't disobey. He was just following orders. Chang Gi-yeon was surprised. What kind of lie was that? K couldn't have given such orders. The protagonist was also outraged. Oh Dae-soo said that he knew K personally and was willing to talk to him. The guard noted that even they didn't dare to just talk to K like that. The old man was surprised. Why was this K so important? The guards demanded that they not approach. The people decided that it was better to take a bullet than to die at the hands of monsters, and rushed forward to break through. Suddenly there was a powerful explosion. What was happening? The guard thought he couldn't see anything because of the smoke. A huge goblin appeared at the bottom of the wall. The frightened guards couldn't understand how the goblin had gotten there. Oh Dae-soo smiled. He realized that this was the work of Kang So-jun. A dark-clad Kai appeared at the gate with a sword in his hand, and asked if the guards really wouldn't open the gate. The guard commander wondered who this man was. He replied that they couldn't open the gate. It was the rule of the Ark. Dark K said he understood. The young man was filled with determination. Dark K added that they were retreating. The people were frightened. If they left, they would be destroyed. Dark K assured them that everything would be fine. Standing in front of the huge monster, he said that he was there and would take care of everything. The protagonist noticed the lizards rampaging in the city. The young man thought that they had never climbed to the upper floors before. They could wait out one night. The player took the body of the destroyed man-eating lizard with him on his way. Oh Dae-soo sat by the bed of the wounded Gong Ji-won and said that he still needed to be watched. The detective asked the young man if he was really Kang So-jun. Our hero sensed a lot of hostility in his interlocutor and asked what he meant. Oh Dae-soo replied that Kang So-jun was already inside the Ark. Kang So-jun thought there must be a misunderstanding. The young man said he didn't know why the detective had come to that conclusion, but that he had only come here for the first time today. K was the top-ranked player on Dream's side, a legendary player who had no equal. After reality turned into a game, his name was heard more and more often. Desperate people said that only K could save them. With the appearance of new figures from the heavenly lands, faith in K only grew. Over time, a religion even emerged, worshipping him and praying for his return. A month ago, at the height of these expectations, a man calling himself K appeared in Arkansas. Kang So-jun was surprised. Had the detective really been in Ark for over a month? Oh Dae-soo confirmed it. The protagonist thought that time was passing differently. Only 4 days had passed since he left Laudervold and arrived here. Time passed differently in the abandoned Laudervold than in reality. He was interested in the details. The detective remembered well the conversation he had heard that day. Light had finally descended on the Ark, which meant that the end was near for the lizards. People rejoiced. However, the K who arrived at the Ark was not the savior everyone had been waiting for. He was obsessed with leveling up, selfish, and greedy, wanting to monopolize all items. However, he was so powerful that even his name inspired fear. With a single blow, he destroyed the centurion of the man-eating lizards, the Ark's greatest enemy. Kang So-jun thought that even Choi Hana couldn't have done it alone. He had never met a player who could pull off something like that. Oh Dae-soo said that after seeing the young man in person, he was convinced that Kai in Ark was an imposter. Kang So-jun was surprised that people believed it at all. Gion was outraged. How could anyone dare to pretend to be K? Kang So-jun said that there was someone from the heavenly lands in Ark. Could this person be trusted? The conversation turned to Lin Lin. Lin Lin was third in the rankings of the heavenly lands. She was a genius sorceress whose skills were unmatched. A mage in Dream's side had to perform a series of mathematical calculations to launch a single fireball. Sometimes magic had to be literally programmed. Only hackers or programmers could master this class. Lin Lin managed to perfect this difficult class. She was called a genius. Did she not even suspect that he was an imposter? The detective said that Lin Lin was not currently in the Ark. She had temporarily left to defend a D-rank dungeon. There was evidence to make people believe that the man was the real K. Oh Dae-soo added that he had K's equipment. The meteorite sword of disaster. A high-ranking ARC official looked at the night city as if it were a silent movie. An assistant reported to Mr. Hart that suspicious circumstances had been discovered. A giant goblin had appeared in Zone 2 near Border G. This was the monster that Kay had taken a week ago. Hart was surprised. Hadn't he disappeared in the Bermuda Zone? The assistant said that according to information brought back by the task force, it had been confirmed that Kay was still alive. Hart realized that Kay had indeed returned. He wondered what he would do next. Hart asked how the operation was progressing. The assistant reported that everything was going according to plan, but they needed another week. Hart said he would give them 3 days. Everything had to be completed in that time. A message arrived informing them that their presence at a meeting was required. Mr. K was greeted. All interested parties were present at the meeting. The speaker kept his word. Advisor and former member of the ARC's parliament, Pan Myung-sok, said that fortunately, the cannibals who had infiltrated Zone 3 had lost interest in Zone 2 and were now circling Zone 3. The player showed a video clip. Those present recognized this as an atrocity. Player Jung Jo-chul was outraged. How can you say, fortunately? After all, the citizens of ARC are dying. Pan Myung-sok said that Mr. Jung-chul was greatly mistaken. This situation was a gift from heaven and a great stroke of luck for them. Jung-chul told his colleague to watch what he says. Mr. Pan Myung-sok noted that they were now on the brink of life and death, clinging only to a wall that could collapse at any moment. If those people had not sacrificed themselves, everyone present would already be dead. If a choice had to be made, it would be better for those unable to fight to die than the players. Pan Myung-sok said that his mother was also in the third zone. She had a leg injury. Jung-chul must understand that he is not the only one suffering right now. The speaker suggested moving on to the next video. Those present in the video saw a giant horned C-class Ludasher. How did it get here? Could this be the dungeon rift? Pan Myung-sok said that these were just guesses for now. Everything needed to be checked. If it was confirmed, ARC would be doomed unless isolation mode was implemented. The ARC is incapable of dealing with a Class C underground rift. Among the players, almost no one is capable of standing up to a giant horned man-eating lizard, though there is one person who can. That person is Mr. K. Will he be able to destroy the giant horned man-eating lizard? Key said it's impossible. His level is 173, and the man-eating creature is at least 180. There's only one way out. Don't let him find the second zone. Mr. Myung-sok said it was possible. However, many refugees had gathered in front of the border wall, as long as the man-eaters don't notice them. If the gate is open now, the people can be saved. However, if the gate opens automatically, the magical barrier of Zone 2, activated by the isolation mode, will be destroyed. It will take about 3 hours to restore the barrier. There is no guarantee that the man-eaters will not discover the people during that time. Hart was surprised. Had everyone gathered for such nonsense? Wasn't the goal of the ARC to preserve humanity? Were those present really willing to sacrifice everything to save a few insignificant lives? Hart said that the choice was obvious. Those with the least chance of survival must be sacrificed. After the meeting, Jung-chul said that Pan Myung-sok's mother would not be harmed, and that everything would be fine. The player replied that she had died long ago, one of the destroyed buildings in Zone 3. Oh Dae-soo is still at the bedside of the wounded man. The player said that the meteorite sword of disaster had been his weapon for a long time. Any player from the first dream side knew that its owner was Kay. Hana said that it was some pathetic imposter like Jack. The sword must be fake too. Kang So-jun said that the sword was real. Choi Hana was surprised. Did he really give away that sword? Kang So-jun explained that he had been deceived. Kang So-jun thought that now the whole picture was coming together. Lee Kan was furious because someone had dared to take his king's possession. Kang So-jun noted the cessation of supplies in the third zone, the isolation regime in the ARC, thousands of people in isolation, the destroyed front line, and the strange behavior of the cannibals. If the goal was destruction, the isolation regime would make no sense. If they were deliberately killing only people from the third zone, what was the imposter's real goal? The wounded man sighed heavily and opened his eyes. Oh Dae-soo noticed that Mr. Kang Ji-won had finally regained consciousness. Ji-won asked where he was and saw a goblin in front of him. Kang Ji-won jumped out of bed and shouted to the detective that they had to run. Goblins were attacking them. Kang So-jun calmed him down. Everything was fine. Mr. Gong Ji-won was in the ARC. The young man came to his senses and thanked them for saving him. The player said that Detective Oh Dae-soo had actually helped the most. The young man asked who the real K was and what they should do now. The protagonist suggested making a detailed plan first. Kang So-jun said that if the night buff wore off soon, they would have to start the operation they had discussed the day before. Oh Dae-soo wondered if it would work for sure. Kang So-jun admitted that the chances of success were quite slim. It was more like a gamble, but this wasn't a game. If they gave up on everything that had a low chance of success, they wouldn't even have tried. The world was doomed anyway.